minute just before we start.
Yep.
Lovely to see some good morning messages already. Fantastic. Okay, when it gets to 1:45, we'll start.
Yep.
Good morning, Ellie. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Kay. Lovely to see all your good morning messages. Lovely to see so many people joining us. Fantastic. So, shall we kick off? Fantastic. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this annual WES Student Conference. I'm Alex Knight. I am privileged to be on the WES Board of Directors, so I get to see all the behind the scenes work that goes on, which I can tell you is a lot to organise a conference like this. So thank you very much to the WES team behind the scenes for creating such a fabulous event for us. The first thing I want to say is a thank you very much to you all for joining, and a huge thank you to our sponsors, BAE Systems, Crane and FM Global, because without you, we wouldn't be able to run events like this, which are hugely valuable to the students. So thank you very much. Now, I'm very excited about today's conference. The theme this year is Shape the World, which is very apt for us as engineers, because we literally shape the world around us with the work that we do. And you, as developing engineers, you are the future of engineering, and you will be the ones to design, create, manage all our engineering assets and all our engineering innovations that will improve the world around us. So I am hugely excited to see our next generation of engineers, and especially increasing diversity with women in engineering is hugely, hugely important. So very exciting. Now, today we have a fantastic lineup for you. And I would say, what I always say to students is that your main job in life is to work out how to fulfill your potential. And events like this will help you because they give you insight, they give you skills, they give you networking opportunities. And these are all really important things to help you reach your potential as an engineer. So please make the most of it. We've got a fantastic lineup and a whole series of sort of different talks, different webinars, and also networking opportunities for you in the breakout rooms. So I am co-hosting today with our brilliant CEO, Elizabeth Donnelly. We would love to see you on Twitter talking about this. Let's spread the word of what we're doing. So hashtag WES Stu Conf, as you can see on the slide there, and hashtag Shape the World. And if you can also tag us at WES 1919, that would be fabulous, please. And just want to mention sort of logistics for the day. So although this is one big conference, it's actually split into 11 different webinars to sort of give you the feel as if you were at a real conference where you could go into different streams. So this morning is all one big conference, so just stay where you are for this morning. In the breakout sessions, keep this webinar open, but use a different tab on your browser to go into Teams for your networking sessions, and you should have had an invite emailed to you for those networking sessions. As we go through the different fantastic speakers, please use the Q&A box for the questions that you have. You can put any sort of comments and support messaging in the chat box, but use the Q&A for any questions. And please do make the most of this, because you get out what you put into these conferences, and it's great practice for you to make sure you get those questions out there. So I won't go through the agenda, because you're able to download the agenda for the day and also all the bios for all the speakers in the handouts tab. If you click on that, you'll see that you'll be able to download that. So yes, and this says, make sure you ask lots of questions. You should be hopefully using Chrome, which will give you the best experience. The latest version, 87, will give you the best experience. If you have any problems, you can put a message in the chat, any technical problems, and the behind the scenes team will try and help. Must also mention that all webinars are recorded, and these will be shared with you afterwards. So just again, a huge thank you from me to everyone, and I am very excited about today. I can't wait, in fact, and I'm going to hand over to our CEO, Elizabeth Donnelly, for her introduction talk now. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Alex. And I'm really excited to be here, because WES started 101 years ago in response to the First World War. 1.5 million women received training to work in factories at a cost of £30 million, equivalent to £1.6 billion a year later, 100 years later. The Restoration of Pre-War Practices Act 1919 effectively barred women from working in manufacturing, just as women were given the vote, allowed to become MPs, lawyers and civil servants. And the parliamentary debate in early June 2019 promised that women would still be able to work in factories, and argued that in some cases pre-war practices had not existed, and that the Act of Parliament would not bar women from engineering. Unfortunately, it was not to be. Our founder, the Honourable Lady Catherine Parsons, and our second president said on the 9th of July 1919, "It has been a strange perversion of women's sphere to make them work at producing the implements of war and destruction, and to deny them the privilege of fashioning the munitions of peace." She went on to say that the women who work so hard to win the freedom of the world may not have freedom at home to engage in an industry where the wages are promising. It is fully acknowledged that men will not go back to pre-war conditions. They must have shorter hours, more leisure, more wages. But as for women, they are merely told to go back to what they were doing before, regardless of the fact that, like men, they now have a higher standard of life. They also wish to have economic independence and freedom to make their way without any artificial restrictions. And what's more, because so many men had died, fathers, husbands, sons and brothers, many women needed to find their economic independence. And so as a result, WES was born. We were formed on the 23rd of June 1919 with originally 5 objects, which were to promote the training and employment of women in engineering and allied trades, to work for the admission of women to all schools of engineering and technical colleges, to give special attention to the future of women who attain skill in engineering and allied trades, to work for the admission of women to membership of all suitable institutes of engineers, and to enable technical women to meet and correspond and facilitate the interchange of ideas respecting openings in the various branches of technical and mechanical science. And interestingly today, as you all know, every single woman who wishes to and who has the ability is able to be admitted to all schools of engineering and technical colleges. And also women are now admitted to membership of the suitable institutions of engineers. We still continue to promote the education of women in engineering. We advance the education of the public about women engineering, and we relieve poverty amongst women engineers, which we achieve by encouraging them to become engineers. And Beatrice Schilling was one of only 2 students, the first 2 women to attend Manchester University, where she took a BSc. She was famous for lapping in the Brooklyn circuit on her motorbike at over 100 miles an hour, and the rumour has it that she refused to marry her husband until he'd achieved the same honour. But what's most interesting about Beatrice, apart from these 2 amazing feats, is that she also invented what was affectionately called Miss Schilling's orifice, which was a flat washer inserted in Spitfires and Hurricanes to allow them to follow Messerschmitts during the Battle of France and the Battle of Britain. And arguably, this is one of the reasons that we were able to win that fight. She went on to also be the person who's responsible for clearing slush from runways, because in the 1958 Munich air disaster where the Busby Bays were killed, she worked out that the reason for the crash was drag caused by slush on the runway and not pilot error, although he wasn't cleared for another 13 years. Daphne Jackson was one of our presidents, and she was a nuclear physicist, and only this week on Wednesday it was Daphne Jackson Day. She was a champion of women returners and said, imagine a society that would allow someone like Marie Curie to stack shelves in a supermarket simply because she took a career break for family reasons. And she created the Daphne Jackson Trust, which gives bursaries to women who want to return to research. And over 300 women have been supported in this way since 1985. More recently, we have someone like Dr. Caroline Hargrove, who built the McLaren simulator, giving Kimi Räikkönen pole position and victory over Alonso in the first Turkish Grand Prix by 18.609 seconds. And a reflection of that is that Montoya was barely a second behind Alonso, but 19.5 seconds behind Räikkönen. And Caroline went on to build McLaren Applied Technologies from 300 to 500 staff. Within WES itself, we still have women at the forefront. Sue Bird was instrumental in establishing InWES, the International Women in Engineering Society. Petra Grattan established Mentorset, which we will continue to work with this year. Dawn Fitt, OBE, established our Apprentices Conference. Dawn Bonfield, MBE, founded National Women in Engineering Day. Benita Mera was the first woman of colour to be WES president and moved in National Women in Engineering Day to International Women in Engineering Day. And our current president, Dawn Childs, was the first woman engineer in many RAF posts and the first female head of engineering at a major airport. And these women did not intend to go out and change the world when they started. They merely wanted to be engineers and change the world on the way. And you are our future, because you, as students, you have your own opportunities to shape the world as you continue your careers. So in 2020, we are the oldest network of women engineers in the world. We are the largest network of women engineers in the UK. We now have a huge social media reach, reaching over 103 million people on Twitter on the 23rd of June 2020, our 101st birthday. And we're celebrating women in engineering across the world. And at the time that I wrote this slide, we had 85 partners, but I'm assured that I think we now have 87. And look how far we've come from being banned in the workplace in 1919 to now shaping the world in 2020. Women in engineering continue to inspire. Our greatest achievement is International Women in Engineering Day, INWED, and it's an annual global celebration on the 23rd of June, our birthday. And this year the hashtag was Shape the World, which we've continued throughout the year for all of our events. And it's an international awareness campaign to raise the profile of women in engineering and focusing on amazing career opportunities. And finally, whilst there are many barriers for women to overcome, we have a lot of self-imposed barriers. A lot of women in engineering feel that they shouldn't be there, that somebody's going to find out they're not very good. But by definition, the obstacles that you've had to overcome in order to even become students at conferences, students at universities, let alone taking a role in engineering, you deserve to be there because you've had all these barriers to overcome. Often women wait to be recognised. They sit in their role thinking I'm doing a really terrific, fantastic job, and somebody's going to notice that and realise I'm ready. But that doesn't work that way. A lot of employers sit there thinking, well, she's doing really well in this job, why would I move her? So if you don't apply, and if you don't tell your managers and your firm that you want to have a promotion or you want to go into a different field, you won't progress. And a lot of the time with applying for jobs, people think about being perfectionists. So women will often see maybe 10 criteria and think, well, I fulfill 9 of them, but I've only got a little bit of experience in the 10th, so I'm not going to bother applying. And yet a man may apply when he's only got 3 of those criteria. So we encourage you, if you do fulfill 3 criteria, to apply, because if you don't apply, you won't get anywhere. And also women are very good at minimizing our abilities. There are 3 words that I want you all to consider banning from your vocabulary. I'm just a second year. You are a second year engineering student. That's amazing. Only. Well, I'm only going to get a 2-1. Well, that's amazing as well. I'm sorry. Do not apologize for existing. All of you are brilliant, terrific women for getting this far alone, and you have brilliant careers ahead of you. And I want you all to do really, really well. And I just want to say, I hope you have a really, really lovely conference and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Inspiring words, and I completely concur with your last slide there. There's a lot we can do to help ourselves. It's very inspirational, actually, hearing the history of WES again. It always inspires me and makes me very proud to be a part of this fantastic organisation. So we're going to move on to our keynote address. We are very honoured to have Dame Judith Hackett with us. Judith, if you can turn your video on to make a start, that would be fantastic while I do your introduction. So Dame Judith Hackett is a chemical engineer. She's currently the chair of Make UK. She's also the chair of Ingenuity, which is the UK skills body for engineering and manufacturing. She's also a senior non-exec director of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, which is an organisation that exists to support and encourage innovation in advanced engineering. And she is also a board member of HS2 Limited, so very busy woman. Now, you'll see in Dame Judith's bio that she has received a number of prestigious accolades and honours, including being made a Fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering. She received a CBE and has also been made a Dame for her services to health and safety, and in particular being a role model for young women, which is amazing. So it's an absolute privilege to have Dame Judith with us. And I think she maybe was having a few technical problems, but let's just see if she's able to join us this morning. Dame Judith, are you there? So it just shows, doesn't it, when...
I can see that she's there, but her camera's not turned on, and I'm not sure she's having problems. I can take her off stage and then put her on.
Okay, let's try that. We won't let the technical issues stand in our way. While we're waiting for Dame Judith to join, just a reminder that please put any questions you have at any time in the Q&A box, and I will keep an eye on those. So don't wait till the end of a talk to start typing your questions in, because obviously then there's going to be a bit of delay and we might not get round to your question. So as soon as you think of a good question that you want to ask, then please put it in the Q&A and I will get round to having a look at those.
I think we're still struggling with Dame Judith for the moment.
While we're waiting, if anyone's got any questions for Elizabeth based on her talk about WES, or if anyone's got any questions about the day, then please feel free to put those in the Q&A box. And hopefully we'll get all our technical issues out the way first thing, and then the rest of the day will go smoothly. I noticed that the Teams invite for the networking room went to my junk folder this morning, so please do check your junk folders if you haven't had any of the links to any of the webinars, because this afternoon we're going to have a number of different streams, as I said before. So you'll be able to see a landing page, hopefully, which then will give you the options for the different webinars that you can access, and you can decide which one you want to go to. So I'm really looking forward to that. You can tell I'm doing my best to fill here.
Yes, I'm still having issues. So I think, I don't know if Dame Judith can hear us, but I'm going to remove her from the room, so hopefully she can log in again.
Okay.
Hopefully she'll come through. And it looks like we have a question. Are we able to revisit the various talks after? Yes, we are recording all of the webinars, and they will be available to registrants after today.
Yeah, thank you, Claire, for that question. And also Ellie asked a similar question. We'll be able to review the recordings. Yes, so that will include the afternoon sessions as well. So actually, if you know, because there are two in parallel, you'll be able to watch the one afterwards that you weren't able to attend, which is actually a major bonus of doing this kind of thing virtually, rather than having to make a choice when you go and see these things in person. Thank you for those questions, Claire and Ellie. How are we getting on? I
haven't seen Jane Judas coming into the room again. And I don't think I have a telephone number for her. I'm just checking to see if I've had an email. Apparently today is Equal Pay Day, which is the day when effectively women stop being paid because we're not paid as much as men. However, there was a report from the Royal Academy of Engineering earlier this year about equal pay in engineering. And it turns out that the gap, if you take into account your location and your seniority, the pay gap between women engineers and men engineers is about 1%. And overall, it's about 10%, but this is a reflection of the fact there are more men at senior levels than there are women. And again, I think that will catch up in years to come as women return from having families and also as more women enter into engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. We have actually got a couple more questions coming through. Thank you, ladies. So Frances has said she hasn't had a Teams invite, and that you should see it should come through from the Women's Engineering Society. So if you search for that, hopefully you can find it. If not, please let us know again. And Deborah's asked, for the networking sessions, will we be meeting people face to face with cameras? That's completely up to you. I think it is great practice if you are comfortable to do that, but it's completely up to you. We've had another question from Lois saying, what hard skills are good to have as an engineer? Do you want to answer that, Elizabeth?
Hard skills. I think most of engineering seems to be about soft skills, to be honest. I've always found that it's about the problem solving, the creativity and the teamwork. But I think that the hard skills will really entirely depend on which branch of engineering that you enter. So I'm a systems engineer, so it's all about the relationship between people and things. And so although I do have a maths A level, I didn't study engineering for my first 2 years at university. I studied law, and then I went into IT and went back to the Open University to study web development and databases, where I've been working very well. And I found this thing called systems thinking, which I thought was about computer systems, but turned out to be about how we interact. So that's all about problem solving. And my then partner at the time called it a degree in drawing and colouring in, because the number of diagrams that I had to do. And it was really fascinating about, kind of really thinking about these processes, about how to get out of sticky situations. But for a lot of people, I think maths and physics really do help. And maybe you can answer this, Alex, because you are you've been working at Amy, so although you now do something else. So what were your hard skills?
I think it's important to look at the sort of the stage we're at as a society and where we are at the moment. And I recommend to engineering students that I talk to at university, because I'm a visiting professor at Brunel, that think about where the industry is going. So no matter what area of engineering industry you go into, the importance of data, technology, analytics is going to become more prominent. So I think because we're in this industry 4.0 time and everybody is thinking about how is, the Internet of Things, connectivity, going to help us as engineers make better decisions about the engineering assets we're designing, managing, improving. And so I would say, focus on whatever area of engineering you're in, be that mechanical, electrical, civil. Also try and look at how you can improve your data skills, your analytical skills, read about latest technology and try and upskill yourself and think about how that is relevant to whatever area of engineering you're going into. So keep your, I'd say, your sort of awareness of technology and latest sort of progress around data, sensors, how big data is helping us make decisions, cloud computing, and think about, especially with like the advancement of AI, even if you're not an expert in that, to have an awareness of it and to be able to ask the right questions of the experts in your team is very valuable. So in terms of hard skills, that's the advice I would give at the moment. But like Elizabeth said, the soft skills around team working, presentation, communication are in a way more important, because we have to collaborate and work together in teams as engineers. We have actually got, I think what we might possibly have to do if we're still struggling with Dame Judith is to get her to record her speech.
I'm here. I'm here.
Fantastic, thank you.
I don't know whether you can see me, but you can probably hear me.
Yes, we can't see you at the moment, Dame Judith, but if you are happy to go ahead with your talk, we'll be able to hear you, and then we'll get to the other questions later. Thank you so much, Jane. Sorry about all the problems you've had, but
please, my problems were my end. We tested this yesterday and it worked, but for some reason my computer will not let me use the camera today. So
don't worry.
Sorry about that.
I've already given your amazing bio intro, so I won't waste any more time. I will hand straight over to you now for your talk. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you and good morning. And first of all, huge apologies for being late. I may be able to shape the world, but I'm clearly not that computer literate yet. So apologies for keeping you all waiting. Making speeches to large audiences is something I do quite a lot these days, but nonetheless, it feels quite daunting, even without the problems with my computer, to be doing that to an audience today, because I'm going to be talking about myself rather than the job I do or my expertise. So what I'm going to try and share with you now is my personal story, and that's not something that I do very often. What I can tell you is if someone had told me when I was in my late teens or early 20s that I would be honoured by the Queen twice, have 8 honorary doctorates from universities around the world, and be doing the things that I'm doing today, I, for one, would not have believed that to be possible. I certainly had ambitions, but I never thought that I would have the opportunities to shape the world in the many ways that I have. So I went to university to study engineering in the early 70s. I had a plan, and that plan was actually not to become an engineer for the rest of my life, but to become a teacher and to teach science and maths in schools. I loved the subjects because they'd help me to understand how things around me worked, and the very best teachers I'd had not only taught me what I needed to know to pass exams, but they helped me to understand why it was important and how that knowledge applied in the real world. I was very clear that to become a good teacher, I needed to be able to do that as well, to understand how maths and science were used in the world, and that is why I initially chose to study engineering. After 2 or 3 years in industry, my plan was to return to education and inspire others to see the importance of STEM subjects in our world. So, obviously the plan changed, despite my teachers at school telling me back then that girls didn't do engineering. I defied them, and with great support from my dad in particular, I went to Imperial College and studied chemical engineering. I have to tell you that I loved the course. I loved living in London for 3 years, and I'm still very actively involved with Imperial 45 years after I graduated. One of the first bits of shaping the world that I did was not really associated with engineering, but occurred when I was at university. And I started, along with some friends, the Imperial College Women's Boat Club. The college had a well-established and very successful men's rowing club, but it seems girls didn't row as well as not doing engineering. So with a few female friends, as I've said, one studying aeronautical engineering and one studying mechanical engineering, we accepted the challenge to row as complete novices in a race on the Thames, and what started out as a joke became a real passion for all of us, and the Imperial College Women's Boat Club was formed. 2 years ago, those same two friends, Jenny and Isabel, and I were invited to be guests at the Imperial College Boat Club centenary dinner, where we met some of the current women rowers, national squad members and Olympic rowers among them. So from what we started all those years ago, we created an organisation that spawned Olympic rowers. Coincidentally, 6 years ago, in 2014, Jenny, Isabel, and I all happened to be presidents of our respective professional bodies, all in the same year. So, back to my story. After graduating, I went to work for Exxon at the huge refinery near Southampton. But instead of staying for 3 years, as I planned, I worked there for 15. The plan to become a teacher was put on hold because I loved working in industry. And more than 40 years on, I have to tell you that if I were graduating today, it's highly unlikely that I would go into the petrochemicals, oil and gas industry, given what we now know about climate change and fossil fuels. But I still found the challenge of making things that have benefit to society to be a really energizing role. I very quickly got into management, and by the time I left Exxon in 1989, I was their operations director. One of the things I'd learned a lot about when I moved into industry was the importance of safety in everyone's role, including my own. This is not just about ensuring that people don't get injured at work, but also that the nature of the processes we are designing, operating, and running also have to be safe. So much so that this safety thing was to become a real passion throughout the rest of my career. I left Exxon after 15 years, but I joined another chemical company running a very different type of process, very much more benign than the petrochemicals processes that I'd been used to, but nonetheless one where I had to tackle a safety culture where people didn't seem to think it mattered if they got injured. But before following on with the safety thread, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I became involved in relation to the environment, and my next career move was driven by that. In the mid-1990s, concerns began to be voiced about the impact of chemicals in the environment, and I found myself feeling quite disappointed with the way I saw the industry that I was part of responding to those concerns. Not listening, basically, or recognizing that there was a need to respond to concerns that people were expressing about that impact. So when I saw an advert to join the Chemical Industries Association as Director of Business and Environment, I applied and got the job. Industry trade bodies, for those of you who don't know them, exist to represent their sector, particularly in the realms of public policy making. But the best organisations understand the need to act as a mediator or go-between between policymakers and the industry itself. It's at least as important to face your industry sector up to what is driving government policy and why some of their asks are unreasonable. And this was a role that I really enjoyed, holding a mirror up to my colleagues in industry and then engaging with government policymakers and many other stakeholders on behalf of industry. I became the Director General of the CIA, possibly the best job title I've ever had. And then after 5 years doing that role, I moved to Brussels for 2 years, doing a very similar role for the European chemical industry, but this time liaising with the European Commission and Parliament. I then came back to the UK. I took on the role of chair of the Health and Safety Executive. So here's where we pick up the safety thread in my career. The Health and Safety Executive is the regulatory body which oversees health and safety in all UK workplaces, from farms to factories, building sites, laboratories, offshore oil rigs, and everything else in between. Their mission is to prevent death and injury caused by work-related activities. And what you may not be aware of is that the UK has one of the very best records in the world in this respect, because we have a very good regulatory system. I chaired the organisation for almost a decade, and I enjoyed that role immensely. The purpose really meant something to me, and I was proud of the organisation. I spent a great deal of my time travelling to other parts of the world, talking about our approach to health and safety, and helping others to learn from our approach. So an ambassador, not just the chair of a UK organisation. I stepped down from HSE in 2016 and was expecting things to get quieter, but that's not been the case. I'm now the chair of Make UK, the national organisation which champions UK manufacturing. I chair Engenuity, which is a charitable organisation committed to developing engineering and manufacturing skills for the future. And I'm a board member for the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, developing innovative technologies for the future. And I'm also on the board of High Speed 2, the biggest infrastructure project taking place in Europe right now. I do all of these roles because I care about the purpose of the organisations and because I'm committed to making a difference through what they do. I believe in HS2 because the climate change challenge means that we have to alter our approach to transport. We have to get more people travelling by train, more freight off the roads and onto rail. We have to use rail instead of air for short-haul journeys. We cannot do that with an infrastructure that's more than 100 years old, but we must build this new railway with sensitivity and with respect for people and the environment. Finally, I want to close this presentation by telling you about one particular piece of work I've been involved in for the last 4 years, because it's probably the biggest and most high-profile challenge I've ever taken on. And secondly, it's going to deliver a massive change to regulation and to behaviour in the UK construction industry. After the tragic fire at Grenfell Tower in London in 2017, it very quickly became clear that there were other high-rise residential buildings which presented serious fire and life safety risks to those who lived in them. I was asked by the UK government to conduct a review of what had gone wrong with the regulatory system that had allowed buildings to be designed and built that presented such a risk to their residents. For a year, this review took up most of my time, and I will admit that it kept me awake on many nights. What I can also tell you is that there are an awful lot of people who have opinions when it comes to something of the magnitude and profile of Grenfell Tower. They all think they know the answer to what happened, but my role was to analyse and look at the data as an engineer would and come up with solutions for the long term, not quick fixes, not a blame game, which were the things that many wanted. My report was published less than a year after the fire, and I made 53 recommendations to government on how to change the system of regulating the building and for multi-occupancy, the building regulations for multi-occupancy high-rise buildings. 2 years on from that report, I'm still very much involved. I now chair a group which is driving culture change throughout the whole of the construction industry to get those who build and maintain properties to care, not only about the people who work on the buildings, but also to care about the safety of the buildings themselves and the people who will live in them. I'm also advising the government on the delivery of that new building safety regulator and the regulatory changes, which are being described by many as a once-in-a-generation transformation in building quality and safety. So the theme of your conference this morning is shape the world. What advice can I offer to all of you on that? Well, many of you have already decided to become engineers. Some are thinking about it. Let me tell you that you've made a great decision. There is no better way to shape the world than to become an engineer. You are providing solutions that will meet the needs of society in so many different ways. And as the world around us changes so fast, we will need to develop more and more solutions to problems we don't even know yet. Take time to work out what you care about and choose a career path and roles that enable you to be passionate about what you do. Seize opportunities when they come up, whether it's starting a rowing club or conducting a review for government. You never know where these things might lead to. Have a plan, but remember that it's probably not going to turn out that way, and be prepared and flexible enough to change course along the way. And finally, engineering is exciting, it's fun, you'll work with some great people, and you will help to shape the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dame Judith. That was an inspirational talk. Thank you. Wow. I think we've all got so much out of that. Thank you. We do have a couple of questions, if you are okay to take them.
Of course.
Fantastic. So I've got a question here from Hannah Burford, who said, have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome? If so, what ways have you found helpful in overcoming this?
Have I ever dealt with it? Yes. And let me tell you, I still deal with it even now. So, you know, when I took on the role in Grenfell, I was clearly coming in from outside of the construction industry to analyse and critique an industry sector that I knew nothing about. Believe me, when I sit around the table at the board of HS2, there are an awful lot of people who know an awful lot more about rail than I do. So it still happens even now. How do I deal with it? Keep reminding myself that the best organisations are the ones that embrace diversity and who value diversity of thinking. And I know that that's what I bring to the table. I don't need to be like everyone else, because what I'm actually there for is to bring that diversity of thinking.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's a great answer. We've got a question from Emily Wayland. Do you believe that investing in HS2 is better than investing in improving existing rail networks?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because our existing rail network is more than 100 years old. We cannot keep using, and in any case, it's full. So we have to increase capacity. And the best way to do that is to create a new rail system to transport people. And then the old network gets used for freight, which currently clogs up the road. So this is a real engineering systems solution. It's not just about building a fast railway. And I think the worst thing about HS2 is its name, because it isn't just about high speed. It's actually about providing a solution that will transform the way we all travel and the way we transport goods, the length and breadth of the country. And it is good for the environment in many different ways. I recognise that right now, what people see of it looks pretty, it's pretty difficult to get your head around that sometimes when we're digging tunnels and chopping down trees, but the net result will be positive for the environment.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we've probably got time just for one last question. We've got so many questions, so it's difficult, unfortunately, to fit all these in, but thank you so much for those who have put the questions in. I'm going to choose the question from Lena Bazir. What personal difficulties have you struggled with in becoming an engineer as a woman?
Ooh, we could be here all morning talking about that. I think one of the things I didn't talk about was that I'm married. I have a family. I have 2 daughters. I think one of the biggest challenges for me, given that my daughters are now in their 30s, was when I had them, and it was at the height of my career. It was difficult because the systems were not in place then to make maternity leave and all of those things easy. So I think probably that's been one of the biggest challenges for me.
So how did you manage that at the time?
With a lot of support from my husband, clearly, and I think that's hugely important. But the way we chose to handle it was to employ a nanny to look after the children. We could do that, and it worked really well for us. But I think there are many more options to women in the workplace these days. I'm really glad to say there are many more options, because nurseries and so on didn't exist in the same way back then. And actually, I think the key thing is that you have to do what's right for you. And it was right for me to stay with my career because I loved it so much. And honestly, I still have the greatest relationship with my daughters. So it's not a question of either or. You can have both.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really empathise that as a mum of 2 young kids. But like you say, times have moved on and I've benefited from flexible working hugely. But it's still so important to have that support network around you and make your partner a real partner if you want to also have a career. So thank you so much for that, Dame Judith. And just, I can't thank you enough. That was inspirational. We unfortunately didn't get through all the questions. I wonder if you've got any time, Dame Judith, whether you could look at the chat over the next break and maybe put in a few quick answers.
Of course.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're going to move on now to our networking break, which is for the next. Now we only have about 13 minutes because we have to be back here at 1:45. But if you want to go over, keep this open, but in another tab, go to the Teams networking room, which you should have had a link to for a quick networking break. Obviously, if you want to go pop and get a cup of tea or whatever as well, then obviously you're more than welcome. Please be back here for 10:45. Thank you everyone so much this morning. It's been great so far. See you in a little while.
And we are now back in our in the conference webinar, and we're going to have a panel discussion about shaping a sustainable future. What do you think the UK Parliament and government's priorities should be while preparing for and delivering COP26? Now, I have a statement to read from our original presenter, Sally Sudworth, who unfortunately has got technical difficulties and is unable to join us as a presenter. But she said, "I'm delighted that you're holding a panel session today to discuss the climate emergency. I set up the Climate Emergency Group because I feel that WES members have a significant part to play. We are the only multidisciplined, multi-sector professional body and have a unique opportunity to identify and promote the integrated solutions that we need to tackle this challenge. I'm really sorry that I'm unable to be with you today. Your discussion is going to help with our planning as we prepare for COP26, and I'm really looking forward to the results of your discussion. Best wishes and enjoy the rest of the day." Now, I'm delighted to introduce our panel, who are all winners of the Top 50 Women in Engineering 2020 on the subject of sustainability. I'm happy to introduce Yasmin Ali, who is an Energy Information Project Manager with the UK Government at the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and she's working within government to help the UK reach net carbon zero emissions by 2050. Professor Deborah Greaves is the head of the School of Engineering, Computing and Maths, and Professor of Ocean Engineering and Director of the Coast Laboratory at the University of Plymouth. She's previously been appointed at Oxford, UCL and the University of Bath, and her interests include marine and offshore renewable energy. Professor Sandy Halliday is the Director of the Gaia Group, and unfortunately I don't think Sandy is able to join us today. Kelly Harrison is an Associate Director at Whitby Wood and has been widely involved in the research and delivery of sustainable strategies and is an advocate of sustainable methods in construction. Sally Pavlovsky is a Sustainability and Prototype Engineer at Living Oxford Lead. She's a self-employed engineer working in low carbon and sustainability engineering in transport, clean growth and sustainable communities. And finally, Chitra Srinivasan, a real-time control software engineer at the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority, working in fusion research. The mission is to produce sustainable green fusion energy that might help solve the climate crisis. So welcome, everyone. And we asked you to answer a single question, which was, what one thing would you like the government to be doing at COP26? So Yasmin, would you like to start, since you are working for the government? Yes, could all our panelists put their pictures on and their cameras on and their mics, please? So I actually see Sally has her mic open. Sally, are you there? Are you able to speak with us? I see Kelly's trying to join us.
Can you hear me, Elizabeth?
So I have the slides available. So I'm just waiting for our lovely presenters to join us. And I will then put up. So Kelly, I can see you. So let's put your slide up. I think that's been done for us now. How are you, Kelly? If you unmute, then we can hear you.
Hello. Good morning.
Morning. It's lovely to see you.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we understand you changed jobs very recently.
I did, yes. Yeah, I've just moved to new companies, so which is very bizarre in the current lockdown situation. But yeah, it's been really good. So
And welcome, Yasmin. I can see your slide is already up, Yasmin. So would you like to speak to your slide on answering the question? Oh, configuring settings. This is what I love about remote working, is the seamless switching and availability of seeing presenters because of different technologies. What I'll try and do is I'll put, Kelly, I'll put your slides up because we can see you. And
Okay. Great, thank you. I suppose I can. As a structural engineer, my slide is based around the built environment and existing buildings. So the Architects Journal currently have a retro first campaign, which I'm a big supporter of, and I'd really like COP26 to discuss and have a look at, you know, the possibilities of how we can implement taxation policy and procurement rules to allow our existing buildings to be kept and have a more circular economy in our construction industry. So perhaps there's, you know, we could reduce the VAT on refurbishment developments. Perhaps we can, you know, implement planning policies which mean that we have to really prove that a building needs to be demolished or can't be reused before demolishing it, and then also you know, have incentives in the procurement routes as well, with publicly funded projects all needing to prove or reuse buildings on a site. I mean, we could take that even further. Could we put a tax on demolition? Could we hold high embodied carbon materials accountable? I mean, look at the way car emissions are taxed. It's based on a output, and could that also be applied to construction materials? Cement production, no, is hugely carbon intensive process. And maybe some of that taxation could be invested into research of, you know, there are lots of low carbon materials and also solutions out there which need investment in terms of research to ensure they're safe for use in our buildings and on construction sites. And so if that money could be used for those reasons, you know, I think we'd have a much more circular and low carbon construction industry. I think that's everything. I had my arguments, Elizabeth.
I wonder now if Elizabeth is having problems. Thank you very much, Kelly. Professor Deborah, is it okay to come to you next? Because I can see you on the screen, which is great.
Yes, that's fine. Can you hear me as well?
I can hear you perfectly. Okay. Thank you. That's great. So hopefully either Elizabeth or Sarah behind the scenes, could you put Deborah's slides up? Perfect. I can see those coming up. Great. Deborah, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name's Deborah Greaves. I'm Professor of Ocean Engineering at the University of Plymouth, and I'm leading something called the SuperGen Offshore Renewable Energy Hub. So this is a large research program funded by the EPSRC, and it's all about bringing researchers together to do research to help accelerate the offshore renewable energy industry. And this is bringing together offshore wind as well as wave and tidal energy industry technologies. And we have a £9 million programme of research over 4 years. We have 10 university core partners. The logos are at the bottom of the slide there. And we have a core programme of research, and we have a networking fund as well, and we have some specific activities that we've developed around supporting early career researchers, and also the equality, diversity and inclusivity agenda. But really we're all about connecting together the different actors and participants in offshore renewable energy and inspiring research towards accelerating the development of the technologies. And my message for COP26 is that this is a hugely important part of mitigation of climate change and transition away from fossil fuels and into increasing the amount of renewable energy, renewable electricity that we have within our energy system. As an island nation, then offshore is really a natural place for us to look. We're fairly crammed in this island, so we need to look offshore as well. There's an enormous opportunity there. And what we see in the research and innovation is that we're seeing new technologies and new ideas coming forward in floating offshore wind and also in wave and tidal technologies. We need to have all of these working together in order to achieve net zero by 2050. That is a massive ambition and hugely challenging. But the other opportunity here is that this is a new industry, these are new ideas, new technologies. So it's a real opportunity for us to develop the industry in a way that takes a sort of a just approach. So we have an opportunity to look at the whole system, to bring engineers to work together with ecologists and social scientists so that we can make sure that the designs that we develop are in harmony with the environment and sustainable. We also have an opportunity for these new industries, this new technology to be a real economic advantage to the UK. And I think we have an opportunity in designing these new technologies and structure to really think about how the technology needs to be used by society. And all of society needs to use and benefit from the technologies of the future. And therefore, I think all of society should have a hand in designing them. So we need to also take this opportunity to get more of our underrepresented groups involved. So that's my message.
That's terrific. Thank you very much. And thanks, Alex, for fitting in when I was unable to unmute my microphone. We'd like now to turn to Yasmin Ali, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Woohoo! Great. Good morning, everyone. As I work for government, I decided to answer the question in a slightly different way and talk about some of the things that the government is doing right now to decarbonise energy. So the focus is on net zero by 2050, and my focus in particular is on innovation that's going to help us to get there. So I'll be talking about greenhouse gas reduction in the energy systems rather than some of the other sustainability issues like things to do with agriculture. There are 3 areas I want to mention. The first one is technology innovation. We need to keep this going. And this is my job at BEIS. It's managing that innovation funding for new technologies. So this is to develop new technologies, but also improve on existing technology and bring down the cost. And a good example of where this has been quite successful is in offshore wind, as has been mentioned already. This has had a huge impact on our electricity system, on the decarbonisation of the electricity system. But there are lots of other areas we need to look at as well that we are looking at and have plans for in the future. So 28% of our emissions in 2018 came from transport. So this is an area for innovation, but from an energy system perspective, we are looking at how can the electricity systems cope with all of these new electric vehicles coming online, and what do we need to do to adapt to that. Heating is a really big issue as well. So that's heating in your homes as well as industrial heating. It accounts for about 1/3 of our emissions. So we are looking at alternatives. For example, hydrogen could be used instead of natural gas. And there are lots of other things that I don't have time to mention, and we've got plans for future innovation programs too. So on to policy. We could have the very best technology in place, but without the right policies, it's going to go nowhere. So going back to the hydrogen example, hydrogen is really expensive right now. So there's no incentive to use it. People use natural gas because it's cheaper and they know that it works. But the policy teams here at BEIS are working on these challenges. So there should be a hydrogen strategy coming out next year, as well as an industrial decarbonisation strategy. And they're also looking at the business models to support things like hydrogen. So what kind of subsidies can you put in place to make this market happen? And finally, I think building on Deborah's point is around communication. So we are doing this for the public. We need to bring everybody along on the journey with us. There's, again, no point rolling out this amazing technology if people don't want to use it. And I think this is something we could be better at, and it's something that I would like to do more of as well, just that communication of what we need to do to get to net zero. And that's all from me.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Thank you, Yasmin. If we now hear from Sally Pavlovsky. I can't hear you at the moment, Sally. Are you there? So I can see that you're a presenter, but I still can't see you or hear you. I'm sorry, but we still can't hear Sally at the moment. It says it's configuring settings, but I can see Chitra's there. So is it possible that we can have Chitra's slides while Sally sorts out her technology? Hi, Chitra, I can see you. We just wait for your slide to come up. There you go.
Yes. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Can you see? Can I please share it from my computer? It will be nice if you could see it from my computer.
Yes, if you can
yes,
click on screen,
I will do that.
That would be fine.
Are you seeing my slide now?
I can see all 4 of my speakers at the moment, but I can't see your slides.
Okay. So I'm sharing my entire screen.
No, I'm afraid, well, I don't know. Perhaps if somebody could indicate in the chat if you can see the screen, because I can't as a host, but maybe the rest of the attendees can. I had a no. So perhaps, Chitra, if we put up the slide for the attendees to see, but if you can read from your slides on your side, would that help? So we can see the slide.
Okay.
And if you can speak from your
Yes.
own computer.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I will use the slide that you have shared.
Yeah.
First of all, big good morning to everyone, and thanks to WES for giving me this opportunity. I'm Chitra Srinivasan from UKE, as has been already introduced, and here I am to talk about the major threat that planet Earth is currently facing, which is global warming and depletion of resources like fossil fuels. At UKE, what we feel is that the ultimate solution for this would be to power our future using fusion alongside renewables. Renewables are great because they are carbon free. Fission is great because that's carbon free too. But by 2050, the energy demand all over the globe will double and it will continue to increase after that. That is when renewables and fission might struggle to meet part of the market needs, and that is when fusion will come handy. So, what is fusion? Fusion is that which takes place in the sun. I'm going through these blocks one by one. Um, Fusion is that which happens when two hydrogen nuclei fuse to form one light nucleus and release enormous amount of energy. Fusion is that which happens in our lab in our artificial star, namely the JET mission. In the jet is actually the world's largest magnetic fusion experiment currently in operations. And if you see the jet block here, on the right side, that's how it looks when the jet mission is turned on. We see a bright pink plasma, which is our artificial plasma, just like the sun's plasma. And the left side is how it looks when the mission is turned off. Interestingly, none of us open and see the mission like this. We have a pair of robotic arms that go inside and do all the maintenance work for us. They can do really complex things like even removing of the existing tiles and screwing back new ones. And all the experiments which we do on JET will be providing valuable research guidance for the largest project, namely ITER. That's the last block that you see there. ITER is an outcome of an international collaboration. It's a 20 billion euro project, and there is participation from 35 countries, either directly or indirectly. ITER looks at seeing a tenfold energy gain. What that means is for an input power of 50 megawatts, we are expecting an output power of 500 megawatts. It's that huge. And this is for testing commercial viability. And the countries all over the world, they have their own prototype fusion power stations. The UK is no exception. So this is the last but one block. And here in UK, we are aiming at having this step by 2040s. This will demonstrate feeding power to the grid and thereby completing the process of electricity generation using fusion. And finally, my statement here about sustainability and other advantages of fusion, it's that fusion is inherently safe and it is less radioactive than fission, and sustainability is at the heart of everything that we do. Why I say so is because from a bathtub of water, by taking deuterium from a bathtub of water and by taking lithium from just a pair of laptop batteries, we can generate 20 megawatt power, which is enough to last for a person for 60 years of lifetime. This is same as generating energy from 1600 wheelbarrows of coal. So my message to COP26 through this talk is to encourage funding and research for the fusion community. For more information, please you may please contact us at the mentioned email addresses, which is earlycareers@uke.uk and communications@uke.uk. We would be happy to take you on a tour of all our facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chitra. That was excellent. Can we now have Sally Pavlovsky?
I'm hoping this works now. Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Awesome.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So thank you very much for having me. So I guess I'm slightly different in this lineup. So I come from the automotive world, where I've worked on many ICE, EV, and looking at hydrogen fuel cell programs for most of the different OEMs in the UK. I'm now one of the directors of Living Oxfordshire, which is a living laboratory down here, obviously in Oxfordshire. The name kind of gives it away. And one of my roles is looking at future of mobility. So where we work with UKRI, obviously BEIS, and other sort of organisations and local authorities, as well as trying to combine academia and the commercial sector to look at trying to push through rapid technology readiness levels of innovation. So the kind of question was, what do we think about Boris and COP26 and stuff like that? And I guess I'm probably going to be the really political one here who says this is absolute. The 10-point plan is lip service. It's an absolute waste of time and money. And until we bring on board actually respecting our scientists, our engineers, and our community that has innovation and has amazing ideas at its fingertips, nothing will ever change. And as we have demonstrated as a nation over COVID and communication, the public needs changing. We have too many people in our population. We are using up our resources, our natural resources, within 6 to 7 months every year of what we have for a whole year. And we need to look at people need to start looking at the figures. So whilst a large number was announced, the reality is only £4 billion of that is new money. And as Chitra has sort of just said, I mean, when you start looking at nuclear and hydrogen and other clean fuel materials, then £4 billion gets us nowhere with regards to innovation and developing innovation. And that is where subsidies and investing in the right places and I suppose as a community, and one of the things that we're doing is Living Oxfordshire, working with the County Council and our industries here. So we work with Siemens, Ocado, EDF, and some of these guys, is pushing our public servants, and let's remember our politicians are public servants that we vote for, and hopefully embracing the next generation of you guys out there that are going to be our next round of engineers, to push the barriers and push the glass ceilings. There is not just gender glass ceilings in our world, there is innovation glass ceilings. And we need to realize that we have fantastic innovation in this country and fantastic talent. And we need to start really nurturing that and really propagating that talent to the front. Okay, otherwise what's going to happen is we are going to lose. So like I'm seeing in the automotive sector that I left a few years ago, I am seeing so many of my amazing colleagues moving abroad, because obviously not just COVID, we've got the big B happening soon as well. It's just all these awful lettered words. It feels like Sesame Street. The letters for this year are definitely CB in 2020. And we really, really, really need to nurture our talent. So one of the things we do here at Living Oxford, or Living Oxfordshire, is we are constantly lobbying our MPs. So cross-party. This is no longer about what colour party people represent. You have to find an ear and you have to educate them on what the solutions are and what the opportunities are. And obviously we're very grateful for having UKRI and UK investment in R&D, but it is not enough. So if you look at Green New Deals, we can create so many jobs, more jobs than we're losing from COVID if we really invest in a new world. And if we don't do it quickly, and we're already about 20 years too late, then the ceiling starts to crash around us. So you are our next generation, and I would urge you, any ideas you ever had. I had a bonkers idea about taking a very expensive classic car and turning it electric because that was more carbon neutral. And in the end, Harry and Meghan drove it on their wedding day. So, break the barriers. If you have an idea, reach out. We have great R&D. I'm lucky enough to work at Harwell campus, and it's just amazing. It just oozes talent and innovation. So my email address is there. I'm all up for bonkers ideas. I'm a prototype engineer at the end of the day, so anything goes. And yeah, we have to push the boundaries, because unfortunately, these latest promises and this 10-point plan is just not even a scratch on the surface.
Wow, thank you very much, Sally. That was a fantastic presentation, and also answered one of our questions, which is, what do you think of the 10-point plan of the government announced this week? And I think it's clear that these are very, very difficult and don't really go far enough. So we have a number of questions here, and I'm trying to see where we are, because I'm still seeing, right, so I have a question for Chitra about fusion. This is from Kay Cody. Do you think if it got to a stage where we could use fusion to power a lot of the UK and the world, would this eliminate the need for nuclear fission power plants?
No, what we are looking at is having the right energy mix. It's nice to continue having renewables and fission, and fusion will work alongside that. This way, we can serve diverse market needs, and we can reap the advantages from everything. Has a different set of advantages and disadvantages. By having the right energy mix, we will be able to reap the advantages from everything and serve the diverse needs.
That's fantastic. And we have a question here from Josie. Do you have any, sorry, actually, some of these were for our previous speaker. Sorry, from Ana Miguel Silva-Teva. I'm very passionate about the environment and eventually would love to be involved in advising governments about their policies too. However, I'm not very sure how to pursue that career path and what sort of institutions could I be working with to do that job. Yasmin, do you have any advice on that?
So there's lots and lots of choice, lots of options. So I work at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which is quite a good place if you want to work on environmental policy or energy policy. So you could look at the government Fast Stream program, which is the civil service graduate scheme, essentially. And there's a science and engineering strand of that. So you could look at applying for that. But there are lots of other organizations, like the one that Chitra works for is kind of tied to government, as is UK Research and Innovation, and quite a few others. But yeah, there are options out there, and feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn or something if you want to talk about it some more. Fantastic.
So this is from Sammy Middleton that maybe Sally can help with. What do you think of plans to move to electric car sales in 2030-35 before meeting the renewable targets in 2050?
I'm always white elephant in the room girl. So, I mean, for me, you have to look at the mix of fleets and the mix of use of vehicles. We cannot convert every vehicle that's currently on the road to electric. The grid couldn't cope. Two, it does absolutely nothing for emissions, because what is not calculated in a carbon emission is the life cycle creation of the vehicle. And in fact, my diesel, so yeah, I drive a diesel vehicle, is no better at the point of handing me the key as me going and buying a Tesla or a Zoe or anything like that. We have to look at the whole 360 of actually the product life cycle and how we create vehicles. When you look at the industry and the ability to be able to meet targets, the industry needs to be pushed. But the industry needs to be pushed sensibly, and you have to bring everybody on board. So electric vehicles are not the only solution. Hydrogen fuel cells, whilst a previous speaker was speaking about hydrogen, I'm actually currently writing the hydrogen strategy for Oxfordshire. And when we start looking at emissions, again, it's about bringing the public on board. We should start taxing people that have more than one vehicle. We should make sure that there is sustainable choices, and we cannot expect people all to move overnight to vehicles that currently start in the marketplace at 23, 24 grand. So again, it's about Boris, bless him, putting his money where his mouth is and actually looking at where subsidies go. So you know what, let's stop subsidizing Mog and Gove's cousins and actually start putting money towards the industry, because the industry needs it. We have the technology. We have no sustainability for electrification in the UK. We are leaving Europe. We've got no access to ASEAN, and we've got no access to buying power for batteries. So find a fuel source that we're going to be able to have. But there is options out there. And again, with UKRI funding and with some amazing innovation and investment where people are really trying to help, there are options coming through, but it needs proper support. So yes, I see announcements like that, and I do laugh quite a lot. But also we should be promoting active travel, because we have Schuber on the end of our feet. We all have these shoes, and we can walk and cycle. So that is also a fantastic way of moving around. We need mass change and mass education of the general public. And that is also our job as engineers. We can't just create it. We have to show why it works.
I do agree, but as somebody who's been unable to walk more than 50 metres for the last year since I've had a bad leg break, we must also consider those who have mobility issues. Our question now for Kelly. from Indira Melanie de Olive. How did you achieve chartered status after completing a Bachelor in Engineering?
Following when I started work, there is a way through my institute, which is the Institute of Structural Engineers, where you can prove master's level knowledge. So after around 3 or 4 years experience, I pulled together a portfolio of work which proved that I had that master's level, and I went to a grueling interview with a professor from Oxford and a director of a well-known practice, and they recommended me to go forwards.
That's fantastic, thank you. And I think, Deborah, were you involved with the structural engineering? Because somebody's asked, concrete is a high carbon material. How do you see that evolving?
Oh, I'm on mute. Concrete, not really my area particularly, but we do have colleagues within the school here who are looking at sustainable solutions for concrete, looking at aggregate being resourced sustainably, looking at alternative strengthening additives, and also looking at alternative to cement.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of research in that area. Kelly, looks like you've got something in there as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we're looking a lot into. I mean, concrete is a wonderful material, and it is needed for durability and in foundations, etc. But there are new technologies out there, and some of the investment that I spoke about earlier that I think really should go into those technologies and developing that, as Deborah was just talking about. I think the stem-free concrete out there now, which can be used, it's the cement that's the high carbon. The other constituents of concrete can be sourced more sustainably, and then it's also just engineers, structural engineers in particular, looking at the right material for the right part of the development that you're looking at. So if it is a superstructure, then maybe concrete isn't the best at that point. Perhaps a more lightweight, a low embodied energy material such as timber, or it could be a better solution. So it's about educating our engineers to be able to design in those materials, funding research to make sure those materials are safe in terms of fire and durability, and then using them in the right places of the development.
Seem to have lost.
Can you hear me? It's Alex Knight.
Yes, sorry. I realised I'd muted my microphone on my computer. So there I was asking people and nobody was doing that. So yes, so there was a question about the government's targets. Do you think that the targets that they have are enough to meet them? Perhaps Deborah would like to speak to that.
Okay, thank you. So targets, I think, are really important in order to set frameworks for motivating people to work in certain areas and motivating investment in certain areas. So it's really important to set the targets out. There's obviously debate around what level of offshore wind or other renewables we need in order to meet our net zero targets by 2050. But I think the important thing is to set some sort of target to get people motivated. What we've seen in offshore wind, the offshore wind industry, is that once people get engaged with the industry, it needs to have significant government investment and incentive to get it going. But then private investment comes in and begins to take over, and prices come down as more people get involved. What we've seen in offshore wind is the price has gone down significantly, and it's become, a very active, very commercial sector. There are new technologies that we've all been talking about that need to come forward in order to have a chance of meeting net zero, because we can't depend on just one source of renewable energy. They have different characteristics, they rise at different times, and so the solution is a mix, an energy mix for sustainability. And in order for those new technologies to come forward, then we need to have the same sort of, we would like to see the same development pathway. So we need investment at the early stage. We need to be communicating about it. We need to raise aspirations, and we need to get people involved and behind the ideas. And then eventually that will bring private investment in and grow the sectors in the industries.
Okay, thank you. We've had some answers in the question Q&A as well from some of our panelists. There's some fantastic concrete you can impregnate with cryptogamics to help with carbon capture too. And Sally Sudworth has said a roadmap is being published for concrete by BSI. And Yasmin Ali has also responded to say that the BEIS is funding work into industrial fuel switching trials for cement manufacturing, so switching the energy input from high to low carbon. But it's also important to think about the process emissions from cement, and there is research innovation happening on that too. Now, we have a couple of minutes before our next session, and so just on the research, we have a question from Gabrielle Gardosi saying, on female-led research funding, a 2018 Guardian article showed that less than 7% of women go to female-led, so less than 7% of funding goes to female-led research teams. How can we provide solutions to these challenges with limited access to funding? And maybe Deborah and Yasmin can respond to this, because Deborah, you are a professor in research, and Yasmin also is in government.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think this is a sad state of affairs, and it's something that we need to do something about. Many universities have signed up to the Athena Swan Charter, which is agreeing or setting out action plans towards raising the participation and supporting the careers of females in academic settings. And so that's something we're doing within the Supergen. I mentioned our equality, diversity, and inclusivity strand of work. It's again, this is a problem. We need to try and address it. What we see is that in engineering, we don't have enough women coming into engineering as undergraduates. Sadly, what we see is the proportion tends to reduce as you go further through career stages. But we're developing actions to try and address that through things like supporting networks, targeting funding, supporting people in coming back after career breaks, and so on. But part of it is really about just encouraging women to take the lead in these research programs.
Okay, thank you very much. We're now coming to the end of this session. I just want to thank you all for your contributions and for struggling on with this technology. And certainly the Women's Engineering Society will be reviewing this technology and seeing if there may be something better so that we can not have so much trouble in the future. There has been a question asked about where can we find your LinkedIn accounts to link with you, and if you can send that to me and to Sarah behind the scenes, then we can publish that as well with part of the recording. Okay, so once again, thank you. And I'd like to hand over to my co-host, Alex, who will introduce the next session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the panelists. That was a brilliant session. And again, appreciate the comments you're putting in the chat as well. I think there are other questions. video.
Morning.
Hi, Simon.
Hi there. Is this our cue to start?
Well, we were hoping to play the video first, I think, and then go on to your session. So I believe we will have a quick video from FM Global, but it might just be that it's loading in the background. I think I can see it coming up, and then we'll get straight on to you both for your talk. So I'll hand over to you after the video.
Okay.
Lovely, great. I hope you all enjoyed that video. And now I'm going to hand over to Simon and Ananya for your talk. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Alexandra. Let me just see if I can get the slides up. There we go. So morning all, I'm Simon and I'm joined today by Ananya. And we're going to talk to you about being an engineer today. And we're going to talk in terms of an emerging engineer's perspective. And by that, I mean, we have both started, well, I started a job, spent 3 months in a job now during the COVID climate. And Ananya's done an internship the previous summer, also during COVID. And so this has meant that as a graduate for me and an internship for Ananya, we can give you a bit of experience of what it's like to start online, really. And so in terms of the structure of this presentation, we're going to initially give you a bit of background on ourselves and why we chose engineering as a degree and then a career. Then we're going to talk about FM Global and give you a bit of a background on what we do as a company. Then Ananya is going to talk about her journey with WES before we go on to the main bulk with the application process. For both of us, our application process was pre-COVID, so it wasn't online, but we can still give you a bit of general advice from people that have just been through it. And then the main part of it is going to be on Ananya's experience doing an internship online during COVID and my starting a job purely online. And then hopefully we can give you some takeaways at the end of it. So I'll start off by giving you a bit of background on myself. I went to Bedford School, studied further maths and physics. And when I went into sixth form, I didn't necessarily know I wanted to do a degree or a career in engineering. However, I did know that I was quite a practical person. And after enjoying maths and physics-based subjects, I saw this as a potential option. So as we do at school, we get encouraged to do some work experience. So I did some at DRS and JJS, where I shadowed some senior engineers. And from this experience, I saw that I enjoyed engineering in general, and then decided to pursue a degree in engineering. So very quickly after starting my degree, I realised it was something I wanted to do in the future. So did a work placement at Millbrook, which is an automotive test ground, and then the following summer did a summer research project at the Oxford Thermofluids Institute, where I did some work on modelling dust and ash getting into jet engines in the high pressure turbine section. And then from then I realised that although I did enjoy these experiences, they were quite specific and I wanted to be a bit more general. And so now I'm 3 months into my first job as a plan review consultant with FM Global.
So hi guys, my name is Ananya and I'm currently doing my master's year of chemical engineering at UCL. At school I did physics, chemistry and maths, and I really enjoyed doing chemistry, but I wanted to do something that had a bit more application and wasn't so theory, which led me to chemical engineering, although it is more physics than chemistry, but I do enjoy physics as well. During my time at UCL, I participated in the Global Citizenship Programme, as well as How to Change the World, which were both 2-week-long projects based on sustainability. So for the Global Citizenship Programme, it was about designing green spaces. I'm the former treasurer of UCL's Women's Engineering Society and engineering intern at FM Global. And I wish to pursue a career in engineering as there are a wide variety of opportunities. And FM Global is a good example of that, as it's actually an insurance company, which we will explain a bit more about now.
So yeah, FM Global is a mutual insurance company. It's founded in 1835. And the mutuality basically means that our clients or policyholders are our owners. And as a result, the needs of the company and the clients tend to be aligned. And this is opposed to a publicly traded company where there are shareholders who may have a say in the direction of the company, which differs to that of the policyholders. So we focus on property damage and business interruption for commercial and industrial businesses. And this gives us a speciality focus. From my training recently, I came across a quote which says, "We are a lone specialist in a sea of generalists." And by this, I mean in comparison to a lot of competitors, which provide many services across the board, we are purely a property insurance company. And so with this single focus, we are committed to be the best of what we do. And we have a shared belief that the majority of property loss is preventable. And part of this comes from the fact that we have 1,900 loss prevention engineers out of our 5,400 employees. So we have a big focus on engineering loss prevention methods. So we have more than 60 offices worldwide, and clients are 1 of every 3 Fortune 500 company. And so this gives us and the success in the global arena here comes mainly from the next points, which we've got some state-of-the-art research facilities which test property loss prevention products and services. And this then is fed into our research-based data sheets. And so this comes from the speciality focus, which allows us to focus on loss prevention products. So these extensive data sheets, and along with consistent online training for our engineers, allows the global method to be consistent. And yeah, so that's a bit about FM Global. And now we'll go, before that, this is just a quick display of where FM Global does business, which is the light blue areas, and then the office locations, which are the pins. But yeah, now we'll go on to talk about Ananya's journey with WES.
So my journey with WES, when I first started at UCL, I signed up to my university's Women's Engineering Society. And I received an email about this 2-day student conference taking place in Warwick, and I immediately signed up to attend. And the theme for that year was Transform the Future, where there were lots of different presentations from people in industry, much like the ones today, as well as workshop-based classes such as behavioural interview skills, which was actually run by FM Global. And this was where I first found out about the company. In previous years, there was a networking drink session and dinner in the evening of the first day. So in 2018, at that dinner, I was sat with 2 employees at FM Global, and they spoke really passionately about their job and explained about their career and what they do in the company, which really excites me. And I took a liking to FM Global then. Following on from the conference, I became the treasurer for my university society, where I helped provide funding so that we could run different events like our Get Women into STEM event, which was a networking event which consisted of a panel session by professionals in industry who spoke about their careers and any opportunities that were available for students, and then a Q&A session afterwards. I once again attended the National Student Conference in 2019. And then in 2020, I completed a summer internship with FM Global, and now I'm presenting at the WES Student Conference. So it's a nice full circle moment for me. And it also highlights the importance of conferences, networking events, and any careers fairs that your university or external ones have on offer. So my application process and how did I actually get the internship? As I mentioned in the 2018 conference, I met with 2 employees who worked at FM Global. And at that conference, I then added them both on LinkedIn. And then in 2019, FM Global were there again. So I approached one of the employees and expressed an interest in carrying out an internship with them. So very kindly after the conference, I messaged her on LinkedIn and she passed on my CV to the HR department. So how did I make sure that my CV was suitable in the first place? Well, I took advantage of my university's career service, where they have a lot of resources for writing CVs, as well as going in and they can check through it. So, for example, making sure that your CV is ordered in a way that you've got relevant work experience for what you're applying for. So relevant engineering work experience, and then everything else following on after that, as well as highlighting specific skills that you gained from each of the experiences that you have listed on your CV is a good tip. So I was offered an internship, and then I was able to carry out the internship despite the COVID situation, which I'm very grateful for. What was the internship actually like? What did I do? Well, I was first assigned a mentor when I joined the company, with whom I had daily catch-up sessions with. And at first, this sounded quite intimidating, but it was actually really beneficial as I was able to ask him questions about the company, as well as things that I didn't understand from that day, such as any jargon that was used, as well as just have casual conversation with him, which is something that I really appreciated, as during COVID, it's a virtual environment. So the social aspect of working in the company was definitely missing. However, the daily catch-up sessions made it less so. Additionally, I was able to join in on other group meetings outside of my immediate group to meet people in the company that I might not have necessarily met if I was in the office. So despite the virtual environment, I was still able to participate in many aspects of FM Global and develop valuable skills. Toastmasters is a national organisation which allows professionals to improve their presentation skills. FM Global held a Toastmasters session every 2 weeks where people gave timed speeches according to the theme for that week and were provided with feedback on how to improve. And part of Toastmasters included a table topic session where attendees were picked at random to answer a question related to the theme for that week as a way to improve their on-the-spot thinking. And this table topics aspect greatly improved my ability to articulate with very little preparation, and also help calm any anxious feelings that I had before. During the internship, I was also able to speak with clients pretty regularly, which improved my communication skills and decreased my phone anxiety. So now at my part-time job, there's no excuse to ignore the phone when it rings. The virtual environment as well presented different opportunities to connect with people, such as interns in America, which would not have necessarily happened if I was in the office. So the training sessions with the US interns ranged from LinkedIn and professional communication skills, as well as the tour of the research campus in Rhode Island, which is where the testing takes place and feeds into the data sheet. There was even an opportunity to speak with the CEO of FM Global, Tom Lawson, who shared some good advice for interns. He said to not take on too many jobs at once, as it is better to do 3 things really well rather than 6 things at a basic level. And he also said that managers cannot read your mind, so it's important to communicate with them about what you want to do and achieve. And I think this also can be related to whilst you're at university. If you have a personal tutor, it's important to communicate with them if you're struggling with anything and they can't exactly see you. Oh.
Looks like our presentation's been taken over.
Oh dear.
So I'll try and get it back.
Okay. Right. Sorry about that. So during my time in the company, I was also able to carry out a number of different projects, which are quite specific to FM Global. So I won't go into too much detail about them, but they did involve improving some of the tools that used in the company. So the projects were meaningful and added value, which was good. Now, the main goal of FM Global is loss prevention in terms of fire, natural hazards such as floods and earthquakes, and boiler and machinery, or more simply, equipment hazards. Unlike other insurance companies, FM Global have a huge focus on engineering, and the role of an engineer within the company is to go to a site, which could be a warehouse, chemical plant, manufacturing facility, just depends on the level of experience of the engineer, and to look around that facility and decrease the likelihood of a fire occurring, for example, and minimize the hazards that could happen if a fire did occur. And this needs to be quantified in terms of the property damage and business interruption, which is passed on directly to the insurance side of the company. I was fortunate enough that despite the COVID situation, I was able to accompany an engineer to a site and see what I'd learned about the role in practice. And I also fulfilled my dream of wearing a hard hat when I went to this site visit. Now about the application process for Simon.
Thanks, Ananya. So I'll talk briefly about the application process because, as we said, it was pre-COVID, so it'll be more just some general advice. The two points I've labelled them under are internship applications and universities' career services. In terms of internship applications, for me, I just think the more you do, the more prepared you'll be, and the less things will come up that will catch you off guard, really. So in terms of for graduate interviews or for internships, you're not expected to know too much about the company and what they do, as they're the experts in that. You're expected to know enough about the company that you can read online, but then the majority of interview questions is going to be based on competency-based questions, really. And that will be drawing from your experience that you've had, whether that's from work experience you've done, or from internships, or from projects you've done at university. And the more you do, the more you can see that a pattern emerges and you get used to the kind of questions that come up. So practice is the best way for interviews and assessment centres. And also failure is the best way to learn. I put that as a little quote, which may be a bit cheesy, but at the same time, before my summer research job, I tried to do an assessment centre, one of them which I failed, and I called them up after to get some feedback on it. Now, not always companies have resources to facilitate giving everyone feedback, but it's worth asking because I managed to organise a call, which was actually on my birthday, which is not exactly what you want to spend an hour of talking about why you didn't get an assessment centre, get through an assessment centre, but it was massively beneficial to me. And so it's one thing I would encourage you to do if you do fail, or if you do, just do as many as you can, really. And then the other thing is university career services. So in terms of my application process, I sent off my CV, I had an interview with the HR and then an interview with the team manager and the ops manager. And the first thing they've seen is the CV. And so I know what it's like to be a student, and you can often take things for granted. CV clinics, if you can go to them, it's just massively beneficial. There's no negatives there. And then the other thing is careers fairs. Often even if you know you want to go into engineering or even specific disciplines within engineering, you don't know about every job there is available. I didn't know about FM Global until I talked to someone in the company and they told me about the job role. And from that, I realized that would be something I wanted to do. So that's the main reason I would say go to careers fairs, just to talk to people and get some further understanding of different job roles. And you can see if you like them or you don't like them, and you start ticking them off, really. So now I'll talk to you about what I've done in the 15 weeks or so I've been in the company. So my first day was on the 10th of August. I was actually meant to start a month later. FM Global were kind enough to allow me to have some time to go traveling, and I was planning on going to South America, but obviously due to COVID that didn't occur. So I started a month early in the end. But this is just a list of some of the main things that I've done in my time in the company so far. Now, as I mentioned before, I have been into the office only for the 2 interviews I've done, but other than that, I've not been. It's all been online. So this is what I've put here. The ones in bold and italic are kind of the takeaways that are just general points that anyone can do that's starting online in the future. So firstly, joining division-wide team meetings. Now, this is something that our manager encouraged, and Ananya's already mentioned briefly about it. And it's just one of the things I've noticed in starting online is it's very easy to get caught into a bubble of talking a lot to people within your own team. So we have team meetings twice a week, and then I'll have meetings with individual people in the team about things that my job entails, really. However, you can quickly get caught in a bubble of only talking to the people within your team. So especially during Teams, with stuff like Teams and Zoom, it's very easy to just join other Teams meetings and just say hello at the start, introduce yourself to some new people, and then just listen to what they do. And it gives you two things. It gives you a bit of benefit of understanding other parts and what other teams do. And also what often comes from it is people understand that starting online is difficult. And so they'll often send you an email after saying, if you want to chat about what I do or my area of the business, then we can organize a chat after. So it introduces those relationships outside of your team. We've also got the online training. That was a massive part of my last 3 months, really. And I'm sure a lot of companies have the same. And to be honest, not much has changed from the COVID situation, because we would have been doing that on a computer in the office anyway. So that's much of the same, really. Daily catch-ups with mentors, Ananya's again mentioned. And the one thing I'd say about this is, again, our manager encouraged us to do this, so we didn't have to think outside the box in this sense. But I would encourage you all to do the same, because often what you miss, it's very easy to put in the diary something work-related with anyone in your company, because it's very easy to see online diaries now, and you can see whether they're online or offline. But what you often miss is incidental sort of conversations. So whether it's in the canteen or on the stairs on the way up to the office, or someone just passing by your desk, those sort of chats, that's what you miss. And that sort of relationship you build, it tends to come with those sort of meetings. So having a daily catch up, which doesn't have any specific specification, will just help build those relationships. And then there's some other things like organized meeting colleagues outside of work, introduction calls to other aspects of the business. If you get any offers from other people to do these things, then I would make the most of them. Then you've got engineering meetings. So we have a divisional engineering meeting, a new engineering forum meeting, and your companies will all have the same sort of thing. And they just they're good in terms of introducing you to other areas of the business. I've managed to go off site and trail a few people, which is part of my job. And that's allowed me to visit certain sites like Pirelli Links and Iron Mountain and actually get out of the home environment. And then aiding other team members while they're away, if it's just something that helps build relationships, especially during COVID, it's something that would be beneficial. Plan review, which is actually my role, which relates into reviewing loss prevention plans that field engineers have recommended. And Ananya talked to you a bit about field engineers. And that's essentially a training role. So 2 years you spend in plan review before you hopefully get promoted to a field engineer. And then there's some consulting engineering programs, which I've done for the last 2 weeks, really, that give
Sorry, we're going to have to wrap up if possible, so we've got time for a question. So if you can just quickly wrap up, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. This just last slide is just some takeaway points, which I can leave on the screen if we're short on time, just to show you what we've takeaway points from our experience, really, and that hopefully will help you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, both of you. That was absolutely brilliant insight from your perspective of what it's like to be a new and developing engineer. We do have a question from Tamili Dear in the question box. It's now just disappeared from view. I presume it's been published. Yeah. So thank you for the talk. Ananya, how did you use your experience at your WES group in your internship application process? What do you think were the main soft skills you acquired or improved during your time on the committee?
That's a good question. Thank you very much. So in terms of how I use my experience, obviously it was working on as a team with other people trying to organize things. So soft skills is organization skills, communication skills were greatly improved because you're not the one taking all of the decisions. You have to work with other people in order to organize different events and take decisions. And also, if somebody plans events, you have to communicate, well, this is our budget that we have aside for it. Is this possible, sort of thing? How can we help? So mainly organization and communication skills is what I gained from being on the committee.
Great. So how did you use that in your intern application process, do you think?
Communication skills is probably like the biggest one, being able to talk to other people. I was with another intern during my 12-week internship as well. So making sure that during the projects that we worked on, we were talking about which roles that we did, assigning different aspects of it so that we're not kind of doubling up on the work. So that was kind of what I used in my application process to kind of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we've got a quick question for Simon. What have you enjoyed most so far from your time at FM Global? That's from Charlotte Twigg.
For me, I think what I've enjoyed most is the trail visits that I've been on. Getting a bit of insight and getting out of just being behind a computer screen, but also getting a bit of variety, really, and understanding what different companies do. So my 3 trail visits were with very different companies. And for me, as someone who's just graduated, it's massively beneficial to go see their whole process, really, and how it all works. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. That was really great. And I have to say, I particularly liked the point you made, Simon, about having the courage to ask for feedback, even if you've failed in something. So that's the best way to learn. And Ananya, the point you made about people can't read your mind. So you need to ask, you need to voice, your thoughts and what you want to say, because you can't expect people to know what you're thinking. But sometimes that's easier said than done if you're lacking confidence, but having the sort of courage of conviction to ask the questions that you have and speak up. Very, very useful advice from both of you. Thank you so much. Fantastic. So I am going to move on to our next session. So if you, Simon and Ananya, want to dial off, thank you so much, or log off the video and audio, thank you. And our next session is going to be, is entitled Engineering Careers Anywhere and Everywhere in Manufacturing. And it's great to welcome Jonathan Corrigan, who's Engineering Manager of Utilities at Crane, and also, the slide's just gone off there, and also Ismail Sheikh, who's a technical graduate from Crane Building Services and Utilities as well. So if hopefully you both can be logging on, and in the meantime we're going to play another quick video, I believe, from Crane, which is who again are a sponsor, so thank you hugely to Crane, and we'll do the quick video and then we'll go on to our talk.
Today, Crane is a large global business with 11,000 associates spread all over the world, split into 4 divisions. The fluid handling segment is a group of businesses including pumps, valves and pipe fittings. It is in this segment that our business, Crane Building Services and Utilities, resides. We have our teams spread across 6 locations in the UK, China and Dubai. Graduates are the lifeblood of growing our organisation, and we are looking to recruit new starters in 2021.
I have a degree in engineering and always wanted to work with a commercially focused manufacturing company. Since joining Crane BSNU, I've worked in various roles which have covered product management, commercial, customer service, and strategic marketing. The company has always been supportive and funded ongoing training. I have completed both a marketing diploma awarded by the Chartered Institute of Marketing and an executive MBA from Warwick Business School.
We believe adding graduates like you to our team is the fuel to energise and grow our business. In return, we can offer unlimited opportunity if you're ambitious and with a can-do attitude.
What I love about Crane is that it supports and believes in their people, and is committed to continuously improve and grow. 3 words I would use to describe the Crane culture are ambitious, diverse, and supportive.
Whoa. Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jonathan. Hi.
Right, I wasn't sure if that would... Sorry.
Yeah, I think the video got cut short there. So I suggest we'll move straight on to your talk, if that's okay.
Yeah,
so
that's fine.
Over to you both, Jonathan and Ismail. Thank you.
That's great. So my name is Jonathan Corrigan. So I'm engineering manager at Crane Utilities based in Hitchin. I'm going to just do a brief introduction and then hand over to Ishmael to give you a bit more of a feel for the life of a graduate in Crane, and also then introduce a bit more information about some of our colleagues as well. So what I wanted really to highlight was more about a general career in engineering and especially in manufacturing. I think sometimes manufacturing gets a little bit of a bad press in the UK particularly, and it's obviously been quite tough in the last sort of few months with the whole COVID situation. But there are a high number of good quality jobs and good quality careers within the manufacturing sector, especially as an engineer. A bit about myself. I started actually as an electronics engineer. I sort of fell into that slightly just by being reasonably competent at maths and physics, etc. at school. And then so I studied at Glasgow. I was sponsored by ICI at the time, so I used to do summers work placements down in the chemical works at Runcorn. And that gave great exposure to different projects, different management skills, different engineering skills. And I stayed with them for a couple of years after I graduated. So the good thing about engineering is even if you're down one avenue, it doesn't close off a whole load of different avenues to you. I decided at that point that my future didn't lie in the chemical industry, so I moved down to Ford, which were based in North London. It wasn't one of the body and assembly plants, but we were manufacturing driver information systems, so like speedos and things like that. I joined as a production engineer, worked as a quality engineer as well, so I used to travel around Europe to the body and assembly plants. And then after a while, I decided I would move into product development. So I got a move to their sort of development centre based over in Basildon, which is partly just out of my own interest, having seen how the parts all go together, and then wanting more control and more influence about the design of the individual components and the final product. It was a really interesting job. And then another post became available at it was actually a competitor, Yazaki, who are a big Japanese company. I think there's a figure that's something like every car or every second car in the world has Yazaki components within it. So it's a big tier 1. My job there was basically to set up an engineering office in the UK to give us capability of designing driver information products like the one you can see in the bottom left there. My first project the business won, the first project we won there was for the Peugeot 3008. And that was our breakthrough into the European market. And we then followed on with other projects, predominantly with Peugeot, but we did do Aston Martin and Volvo, and then also later on General Motors. So again, it was a great experience. You get to travel, you meet different cultures, over to Japan, or across Europe. And the slightly odd thing for me, having started as electronics, my role there was, as well as a project leader, was now transformed into sort of mechanical engineering manager because of my on-the-job training and also some of the training modules I'd done. I'd learned competencies around plastic injection molding, illumination, all that type of stuff. And it was a really rewarding job. You get into interface with design teams at the car companies. So if that's the sort of thing you like, then it really is a challenging and interesting role. However, having said that, although the travel was very good and I did enjoy it, and it broadened my horizons, there came a point when I decided slightly less travel would be good for me. And at that point, I stayed within product development, but moved to Crane. And you've just seen the introductory video. So obviously Crane is a big manufacturing company, a big engineering company. And the sector I'm responsible for, or the part of it I'm responsible for, is design and development of new products for the water and gas industry. So again, it's built upon the experiences I'd developed, but I did have to come to terms with new technologies for me. There's a lot of steel fabrication, a lot of metal work, a lot of casting technologies. But the fundamentals of how you develop a product, how you test a product, were all kind of the same. And what really attracted to me in this role, and what I still really like about it, is that here on the factory at Hitchin, we're designing and developing products which are then manufactured on site. So I can look outside of my office window and I can see where we actually make the products. And then also within my department, we have a test department. So we do the product testing and qualification. And to my mind, that's the sort of best engineering role you can have when you've got the sort of visibility of the entire sort of product development life cycle, from concept, design, manufacture, through to test, and ultimately to putting it into production. So that was really all I was wanting to do there, was show that I think when you're a student, certainly when I was, you feel there's quite a lot of pressure upon you to have a clear sort of sight of your career path and where you want to go. And while I think that's good, and lots of people have that, and you'll hear from some who clearly do have a very sort of clear focus, I think, certainly in my experience, by being open to different opportunities that present themselves as they come, you can really get a rewarding and interesting career out of it, all within an engineering sector and all within essentially manufacturing, a lot of which, thankfully, is still in the UK from my perspective. So on that note, I'll hand you over to one of our more recent graduates at Crane. I'm at the kind of other end of the spectrum, you may have noticed, but so I'll hand you over to Ishmael now. Thank you.
Sorry, Ishmael, we can't hear you at the moment. Try speaking again. No, I can't hear you. I wonder if there's someone behind the scenes that has potentially muted Ismail, or
Ismail could check on his.
No, I still can't hear you, unfortunately.
Ismail, can you check on your computer keyboard to see if you've accidentally muted your own mic on your keyboard? Oh, he's disappeared now. We can see you again, Ismail. Can you try speaking?
I'll go and see if I can a system. He's not usually this quiet, I can tell you that.
Thanks, Jonathan. Once again, apologies everybody for this. Right, Ishmael, we can see you again. Can we try your audio once again? Unfortunately, no. I can't hear you.
Again, Ishmael, maybe you could turn the volume up on your computer.
It might be that is that Jonathan?
Jonathan.
Coming in to help. I wonder if Ishmael needs to actually log out and come back in again.
Well, I'm wondering, since Jonathan's computer worked, maybe they could switch offices.
And yeah, very good point. If they're in the same building, fantastic.
That's exactly what we're just about to do. Sorry, excuse the mask, we're COVID compliant whenever we're away from our desks. So.
Absolutely.
You sure?
Yeah, we have massive feedback. Ishmael, could you use your own computer?
Hi, sorry.
Yes,
I
we
don't
can
know
hear
what's
you.
going on. Can you hear me now?
We can.
We can.
I'll remove this mask as well. So, hello, sorry for the technical issue that we had. It was unexpected, actually. I was expecting to start it on a good note. But yeah, so I hope everyone's well and keeping safe. Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ismail, and I'm currently working as a technical graduate at Crane Building Services and Utilities. I'm supporting a new product development project at the moment, and my educational background is Master's in Advanced Mechanical Engineering with Management and Industry, which included a year-long placement in Diodes Incorporated, which is up in Manchester. I promise that I'll try my best not to bore you. Although I don't have a huge amount of work experience, I can share my personal experience with you, which allowed me to reach at this point in my career. Firstly, I'm going to speak a little bit about why I chose to study and pursue a career in engineering after high school. And after that, I will share my experience so far here at Crane Building Services and Utilities, and which has been beneficial in shaping my career so far. And lastly, I will share a short video of an interview with some of the people, successful people within our business who chose engineering as a career, which I hope you will find inspirational. So moving on to my journey. So it all started when I was a kid, roughly about 10 years old. And I can proudly say that my father inspired me to go for engineering. Since my childhood, I actually always observed my father repairing and making things in a small workshop and use all these tools like grinders and drill machines. Initially, I was never interested, but I would often give him a hand in terms of handing over screwdrivers, tightening small screws or minor things like that. So we had this old car which used to break down quite a lot because of not being in use as much. And one fine day, it refused to start. So my father was very quick to sense what the problem might be. And he went on to disassemble the air filter and sprinkle some fuel into the carburetor, some petrol. So he asked me to start the car, and it started in a click. So it was quite fascinating for me. I was really curious on how things work in relation of a gasoline and the carburetor and how all the things work together to make the car move. So this paved the way for me to go for engineering. And at that stage, I decided that I don't want to become anything but engineer. So after passing out of high school, I chose to go for a diploma in mechanical engineering rather than going for A-levels. I got a lot of criticism for that from my family and friends, as it wasn't the traditional route to go into an engineering degree. I passed my diploma with a first class in 2014, and then completed my bachelor's in mechanical engineering in 2017 with the first class as well. I had planned this in my last year that I want to go abroad to pursue my master's to get a good global exposure. So I was very fortunate that I got the opportunity to come to the UK for that. And I wasn't too sure about working here in the beginning, but after a few months, I realized that there is a huge demand for engineers in the UK. Thankfully, a placement year was a part of my course. But when I applied for it, I was constantly rejected for numerous roles and was losing hope because we had a deadline within which we had to source placement. I kept on developing my skills, my employability skills, my interview skills, assessment centers, and I started applying for as many roles as I can. But after hundreds of applications and several interviews later, I was finally able to secure a year-long placement at Diodes Incorporated, which is in Manchester. And it was the role was basically around yield engineering. So being my first professional role, I learned a lot during my time there. I got the opportunity to work on many projects, solving real-life problems, and learn about lean engineering principles whilst putting it into practice on a day-to-day basis. This certification, I got certified as a Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt, and during my time at Diodes. And this, along with many other training courses, helped me tremendously in securing a graduate role later at Crane. Moving on to the next slide. So talking about my experience here at Crane, I've started as a technical graduate, which is basically a permanent employment. And the best thing about graduate schemes is that you get to work for a set amount of time, say about 6 months in different departments of the business. And at the end of the schemes, you're offered a more permanent or more specified role. You're supported at every step in terms of training and development. So basically, you get an overall exposure of all sides of the business and the essential skill set that is required before moving into a permanent role. I started my role at Crane in September 2019, supporting as a process engineer, working mainly in production areas. It was quite heavy duty and very fascinating for me because I always wanted some role which involves getting your hands dirty and rolling up your sleeves, something like that. So my first job was to do a report on a machine which was quite old, which is a British Federal welding machine. We're trying to replace it because the costs were too high. Then I moved on to support a massive project which involved 2 robots and an automated production line for our dipping process. It involved coating thickness measurements, assisting with pre-run checks, gauge R&R studies, designing frames and patterns to simplify robotic movements, identification of process variation, and so on. By this point, I had completed my first 6 months. So the next, for my next movement, I moved to the engineering department as a design engineer, supporting a key new product development project. Right at the beginning, I completed a CAD training course that gave me a base to work on, actually. And after a few more months, I was introduced to Agile Scrum methodology by working on this project. And I learned about team working, project management, and deadlines. Working in the engineering department, from designing to testing and prototyping, I felt like I'm definitely making a difference. To conclude my experience here at Crane, I'm really enjoying my time here because the support that you get on a day-to-day basis is overwhelming. I didn't expect that it's going to be like that. There has never been a time where I was stuck with something and people were too busy to help. It being a big business and a busy business on a day-to-day basis, I was thinking that I wouldn't be able to contribute. But if you try and find some opportunities yourself and put forward, there is always something that you can change for the better, of course. And the other thing that I like about the graduate scheme is the timely sessions with my mentor and my manager to speak about my development or concerns, which I think helps a lot. Of course, you have to take charge of your own development, but it's a lot quicker when you are at the right place. So in my opinion, if you want to make a difference, be a part of something that changes lives and inspires others, you should definitely go for a career in engineering. To move on further, these are some success stories from our business. So I've interviewed all of them and prepared a short video that I think will be helpful. So I'm just going to play the video very quickly now. Bear with me.
Hello, my name is Chris Gray. I'm the Vice President of Operations, Quality. Hello, my name is Chris Gray. I'm the Vice President of Operations, Quality, Health and Safety for Crane Building Services and Utilities.
Hello, I'm Max Hutchins. I'm a process engineer at Crane, which means I deal with day-to-day production, making things run smoothly and continuous improvement and that sort of thing on a day-to-day basis. I've been with Crane about 1.5 years now.
Hi, I'm Radhika Ramesh, Business Line Manager for Gas Utilities at Crane Building Services and Utilities. So I've been with the business for 9 years, longer than I thought I would be, and over a range of roles.
My name is Christy Suresh. I'm a Business Line Manager. I've been with Crane for 10 years.
Well, that's a good question. I'd love to sit here and say that I was inspired by the greats, by Brunel or Stevenson or Watts, but the truth is I just followed what I was naturally good at and what interested me. I knew I wanted to go to university and get a degree. It felt like the right thing for me to do at the time, to get a degree in order that I could learn more and ultimately hopefully would lead to a better job and career. So when it came to choosing a degree, it just seemed natural for me that engineering was where I should focus, given what I was good at, given what I enjoyed.
I fell into it by accident really, because what I wanted was, I wanted something I could use, and I wanted something that could help me understand the world around me. And I kind of thought engineering was building bridges, fixing cars, that sort of thing. I didn't know much about it. Graduated and then did something unrelated to physics. I got a job as a process engineer in a small company. If physics is the key to understanding the world, engineering is the key to influencing it and manipulating it.
Yeah, I think everybody have a source of inspiration or reason, but my reason was predominantly my parents were engineers, but also if you think about it, there's the wide variety of streams within engineering that you can work, and it's got a whole lot of opportunities. So like an electronic or even aerospace or even industrial, mechanical. So I think there's a broad variety of roles and opportunities that you can get into, which is what was also encouraging.
Even though the initial push was actually from my parents, I was always curious about how things work and have a keen mind for applying what I learned to solve real world problems.
So I was very lucky at university. I was able to secure a summer placement with a company called GKN. So much like Crane, they're a manufacturing and engineering company. I then applied for the graduate program at GKN. So when I finished university, I joined their graduate training program, and I got a real breadth and experience of the different aspects of manufacturing. And then 8 years ago, I joined Crane, and have again been fortunate enough to be promoted through different jobs. But throughout my career with GKN and with Crane, it's been what's been key has been that broad exposure to a variety of those roles.
In that I was never trained as an engineer originally. I was a scientist by education. So I started at a low level in basically a small niche materials engineering company. And at that point, I really understand what a process engineer did. But roughly, a process engineer's job is to bridge the gap between R&D and production. You take an idea and make it into a real process. That was a sort of a chemical engineering company. It dealt with a lot of chemicals, a lot of electricity. I was there for about 6 years, and then I moved to Crane. I was starting from scratch in terms of that knowledge, but I had the core skills to support me.
So to think of it, I started off my career in Volvo, again engineering, a manufacturing firm, automotive, and it was a process engineering role. I'm now a business line manager managing the growth and profitability for a 15 million business, and in gas utilities, which is completely different. So what has my journey, how has it led me here? I think it's underpinned by my engineering background, and it's really helped. There's been a lot of touch points throughout my career with the engineering background, the product management role, which I think is a fine sort of mix between marketing and engineering. Product management is where you're translating the customer need into an engineering spec. As an engineer, you don't have to get into the drawings, or always it's not about the chamfer, the ends, or what the tolerances are, but it's just even translating the market needs, as simple as that.
Since completing an undergraduate in manufacturing engineering and master's in engineering business management, I joined Crane as a sales and product management trainee. I have done various roles in product management, commercial, technical sales, customer service, and strategic marketing. Having received my professional diploma in marketing from the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and additionally, I completed an executive MBA from Warwick Business School. I was lucky to have worked in various sectors of the manufacturing business, whether it was the building services or the utilities.
So my aspiration,
to a market and growth with an engineering background, it's just the possibilities. And look at all the automation, all the industries at the moment. There is some element of manufacturing, and it's definitely there is software, there's so many streams to do with that, but that's where the world is heading. And even when I started, I was the only woman or girl in my department, but it's nice to see that the mix is changing.
We continue to be part of developing solutions which can change our day-to-day experience, and able to mentor and inspire people around me. Why should one choose engineering? Well, first being transferable skills. The skills that you develop as an engineer are incredibly valuable and highly sought after. For example, project planning, analytical, logical thinking, attention to detail, communication, numeracy. Secondly, always in high demand. There are never enough engineers, especially women. More the better. Finally, inspire others. You're inspiring a whole new generation.
Okay, so that was us. And if you have any questions, just pop them in the question and answer section. We'll be happy to answer it. Thank you very much. Hello?
Well, hello. Ishmael, thank you for that. That was a very inspiring presentation and video. And we have a couple of questions here as well. So
Yes.
if I can just lead on that. So Yagmor Kareem says, hello, I'm the founder and president of the Women in Engineering Society at the University of Exeter. And I was wondering what kind of technical aspects do companies expect you to have in a year in industry internships as a second year engineering student? I'm applying to several companies, but I still could not get an offer. Do you have any suggestions?
You don't necessarily have to have some skills. I believe the basic skills that you get at the university acts as a starting point for you to build on, and companies know that and they accept. What they look for is the enthusiasm on how you come across as a person, what your interests are, and apart from your study, what do you do in your leisure time? For example, I was involved in a part-time business selling watches, and watches, shoes, and participation in volunteering activities. So there's no set of technical skills. Obviously, you have to know your basics of engineering. They're not going to ask you about any equations or anything. They will ask you about a problem scenario, but you don't have to answer it right. You just have to show your approach on how you're going to take the problem and then build up on it in front of them. And that's what you need. To put it into simple words, enthusiasm, what you do in your leisure time, and how you come across as a person, and obviously your communication skills. So that's what really matters because it's on a basic level.
Brilliant. And I remember that you were saying you'd had to apply for quite a lot of opportunities. And Sarah Abdulahad has asked, did you get any feedback from your many interviews and assessment centres when you were applying for a placement? And what kind of feedback and advice did you get?
I remember I only got a handful of replies, maybe 10. I applied for 150.
Wow.
So that was quite disappointing, I think. I was demotivated at that point, but the feedback that I got was really good, and it was from big companies like Rolls-Royce and stuff. I applied for a manufacturing engineer internship at Rolls-Royce through Uni, which is an organization like yourself, the WES. So they gave me quite a good feedback and some recommendations on where I can improve. But because let's accept that companies are busy when they're recruiting people. So your expectations to get a feedback should be low from the beginning to avoid any disappointment further down the road. So obviously follow up as much as you can, but if you don't get a feedback, it's okay. Just carry on applying on others.
I think that's really great advice, Ismail. And I must say, having recruited people myself, often you're faced with a choice of, a spread of really, really excellent candidates, and you want to employ them all, but you don't have the positions. So if you don't hear or if you don't get on a shortlist, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that there's 10 or a few other people who are that little bit better or who fit.
No, I agree, definitely. What I believe is there's always a role which is out there. You just have to find it from, it's like a treasure hunt. You just have to go out there, put yourself out, apply for as many roles as you can. And if you hit the right spot, you're going to get in.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much to Jonathan and to Ishmael for your presentations and for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. And also thank you very much to Crane for your sponsorship. It's now my very great pleasure to introduce Joanna Wood from BAE Systems and Paula Clark, who is from Leonardo. Now, Paula is responsible for the leadership and development of all engineering and program management activity across Leonardo Electronics UK, which offers solutions, services and capabilities across maritime, land and air domains in the global market. And Joanna Wood is the Engineering and Quality Director at BAE Systems and was also one of our judges for the Top 50 Women in Engineering in 2020. In this role, Joanne has been responsible for providing strategic leadership for all business units across the company and for driving strong standards in process, integrity, delivery and capability. And we're delighted to have you both here.
Thank you.
And we'll hear from Paula first.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Can I just double check on the sound?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. We can hear you.
Fantastic, thank you. So thank you everyone, much appreciated. So I was asked to come here and talk with you today about my career experiences and my journey to the role I hold today as the Engineering and Projects Director for Leonardo UK. You've heard from several extremely professional and inspirational people here this morning, and you'll continue to do that throughout your day. People here will have given you exceptionally valuable advice, and when I was asked to come here and talk with you, I wondered what I could possibly add to that lineup. And so I decided to add a little bit of vulnerability, because you'll feel vulnerable at times as you embark upon your career journey, and I want you to know that that's okay. So rather than talk to you about my career, I wanted to share something of myself that isn't polished, and something that others in my position probably wouldn't want to do for very good reasons. And it's something that over the last 3 weeks I've wondered whether or not I should do. And that is that I've written a poem for you. It will not have escaped your notice that it doesn't say poet in my job title, nor in my bio, and that's because I'm not a poet. And there are going to be times that you're asked to do things that will leave you vulnerable to criticism, or even just people looking a little bit bemused. So when you face those challenges, try to liberate yourself from other people's expectations. Take the plunge and see how it feels to do something that you wouldn't normally do. In my defense, that's what I'm going to do for you this afternoon. In my defense, there's no mold for a woman, no mold for a type of engineer, no way that I'd want us defined by the number of piercings we have in our ears, or the clothes we choose to wear, or whether our age means we can be wise, or how much we do or don't smile, or how assertively we criticize. In my defense, we won't pretend this doesn't happen, though we won't often see all these woes, yet we've all experienced it somehow. With the highest of highs come the lowest of lows. And I want us just to acknowledge that it's okay to get it wrong. The important thing is listening and learning and helping each other to get along. In my defense, women champion men too, who have helped us in getting to this place. And for every misogynist out there, you'll find 10 good ones to fill that space. All genders are fantastic allies, and we have a duty to ensure that in gaining equality of women, we don't forget to celebrate all. In my defense, I didn't choose engineering. Engineering was born into me. My journey to engineering director started before I'd even turned 3, by building with wooden bricks and Lego and later rebuilding my dad's motorbike. I'll admit at the 80s it was uncommon, but I can't help but like what I like. In my defense, I knew just like you did that I wanted this good life for me, but pursuing anything out of the ordinary just doesn't come for free. Oh, sorry, I seem to have lost my slides. I've had to do a double take when even in the noughties told I act like a man, that my masculine words were not welcome. My assertiveness was put on a ban. In my defense, I sat and reflected despite outwardly putting on a smile, and I decided to challenge behaviours, committed that I'd go the extra mile. I was told my accent wasn't posh enough, that I'd need to work on pronunciation. They went quiet when my assertive response was delivered with precision and enunciation. In my defense, that's not how my world works. No longer will I sit on the fence. No longer will I sit in silence. My job's to build your confidence, to ask them how it would feel to be judged more by perception than what they do. And I commit to promoting on merit so that you can really be you. In my defense, we'll celebrate your individuality, and I'll encourage you to lean in. I'll protect us on the days where it's hard, and over time you'll get thicker skin. Because being an engineer today is more than just a role. You'll have to be many things to many people as you're climbing the greasy pole. In my defense, we admit when we're wrong rather than vowing to plough ahead. Much better to pull the plug early. Other ideas can be nurtured and fed. And when we find our mistakes, we let others know what we did, and that fosters honesty and integrity. No experience was learned that was not lived. In my defense, you can trust your own judgment. You will form your own perspective. Do not underestimate your ability to be curious and perceptive. Curiosity is your friend and will make you probe and test some more to get to the nub of the issue, so that when you decide, you are sure. In my defense, decisions are welcomed much more than indifference. And sometimes you'll get them wrong, which is not a lack of competence. You see, good decisions are made with the best information you have at the time. And in revisiting whether that's still valid, you assure yourself it's still right. In my defense, our honest opinions are appreciated when backed up by fact. No need for sugar, spice, or all things nice. Professionalism naturally requires some tact. But there's no need to pull any punches, and courage is sometimes tinged with fear. Interact with good intentions. You'll find people willing to lend an ear. In my defense, advice is easy to come by. Engage with all that it's coming from, but question and test what people tell you. Gut instinct does not evade the young. There'll be lots of sage, wise words from people often with more years than you. Good advisors will not be offended when you decide for yourself if it rings true. In my defense, you need not be perfect. Goodness knows that few women claim to be. And if you need some reassurance, just hear some of these tales from me. From running late across the car park as a single mum, it's tough when you turn up frazzled and tired because your 5-year-old's night was rough. In my defense, I FaceTimed in for parents' evening. Not something I'd often recommend, as the teacher scowled down at the camera, sealing a parent's reputation I could not mend. But when I look back at this chaos, and I look at phenomenal engineers today, I realise we're all just people, and I hope that people aspect never goes away. In my defence, women are not victims. Accountability is there to be grasped. When asked for volunteers for horrible jobs, do not let your hand go up last. Empowerment is taken, not given. Push yourself until you decide to stop. Don't make others give you permission. That's how you and I will get roles at the top. In my defense, those roles are fair game. Those roles are there to be won. And in fighting right, we teach others lessons, valuable lessons for daughters and sons. Because like it or not, you're role models. And others will look up to you. Be proud of what you show them, because one day they'll be role models too. In my defense, we're all hard-working people filling our futures with technology and hope. But there's no dressing it up nicely. Some days, all you can do is cope. And when you come across these challenges, I want you to remember that you are robust and you have the tools to manage, and you'll fight to make it more just. In my defense, we won't worry or ponder how we think we might be perceived, and we'll strive for that nirvana where we're judged by our words and our deeds. And when you come into engineering and you take up the challenge and fight of building our technical excellence, you help other women like you take flight. In my defense, I'm not going to pretend that it's all perfect and works like a charm, but I will commit that your gender will never cause you any harm. So enter this working world with resilience abound and confidence, knowing that people like me have your back. That's what I commit to in my defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. That's amazing that you managed to put all of that content in there and make it rhyme and scan as well. I'm very, very impressed. So if we now like to hear from Joanna Wood, who is the director at BAE, and she's now going to she's now going to speak. And we currently can't hear you, Joanna. Perhaps you could write something in the presenter chat. And Paula's getting lots of praise in the public chat. Wonderful poem, thank you. That was just fabulous. Some really important messages in there. Well spoken and touching. I can't put into words how inspirational that poem was. Thank you so much. And thank you for the beautiful poem. There's really, really amazing things. We can't see or hear Joanna at the moment, but I can see that she's trying. Ah, hello, there you are. Good to see you.
Can you see me?
I can see you and I can hear you.
Amazing, thank you. And yeah, I echo your comments. That was amazing, Paula. Thank you. Okay, so slightly different tack. I thought I'd take you through a couple of things around being an engineering director, the inspiration behind my career path, what roles I took to get me to this position, and then a little around what companies are looking for in graduate engineers now and in the future. So as you were introduced, I'm Joanna Wood. I'm the Group Engineering and Quality Director for BAE Systems. So BAE Systems is a large international defence company. In terms of engineers, we've got around 28,000 engineers worldwide, and my role is I sit in the head office and I'm responsible for the governance, so the policies and processes that we have for engineering, the assurance, how well we are performing engineering across the business, the capability, so making sure that we have the right skills, making sure that we are training our engineers for what they need for their day-to-day jobs and for what the future jobs will be. And I'm also responsible for integrity. And that really is around product safety, product environmental, product security, making sure that the products we make are safe for the people who are designed to be safe for the people who will manufacture them, but also safe for the environment that they go into. So it's a huge responsibility in terms of safety and security. I will move on to the next slide. So why I chose engineering. This is a photo of me in 1987. So there I am, 7 years old, and I'm sitting on an Ariadne helicopter, which is at the Portsmouth Naval Base Family Day. I've always grown up in a defence environment. My dad was head of detonics, which is detonators for missiles for the Ministry of Defence for a very long time. But this day here was actually to go and visit my uncle, who was in the Royal Navy. And I absolutely fell in love with everything to do with engineering that day. I remember it very clearly. I loved the ships, I loved the helicopters, I loved the planes, and I wanted to know how they all worked. And it really cemented in my mind that, yes, I wasn't just someone who liked fiddling with things and taking things apart. I was someone who wanted to make a difference in the world and actually do engineering in the defence environment. So I was very clear from an early age that that was what I wanted. So this picture here on the left of the screen, that is my uncle. He was a meteorological officer in the Royal Navy for over 20 years, and he served during the Falklands conflict. And the story of that really became the background story of my childhood. Although I was only very young when he served, you know, the stories around his ship being hit and lost, and the lives that were lost during that conflict were the background story to my childhood, and something that really resonated. And I wanted to make sure I was involved in the future in preventing such terrible tragedy actually happening again. He served on the HMS Ardent. The HMS Ardent, I later found out, was built at the Yarrow shipyard, which is now a BAE Systems shipyard on the Clyde in Glasgow, where I have spent a huge amount of my career. We'll get onto my career later, but I've spent an inordinate amount of time in that Glasgow shipyard, seeing the ships that come out of there now and being responsible for the design and the safety and the end of those products and the engineers who create them is just such a huge honour. I can't even begin to talk about. So this goes from my uncle to me in the middle, and then on the far right you can see why I do it still is really about inspiring the next generation of engineers. So that in the much more modern helicopter is my son. I do have a daughter as well, so I do care about inspiring both men and women into future engineering, but my daughter does not like me to share photos of her. So you get my son on the helicopter there. I take my role as a female in engineering incredibly seriously. I have to be honest that for a long time I didn't want to be one of the number or the target or driving to be special in any way. I wanted to be badged as an engineer, not a female engineer. And it wasn't until I rose to the position that I'm in now that I realised the legacy that I will leave behind and all women in engineering will leave behind, and making sure that we can share the journeys that we've had and making sure that we can drive such that we can make the way easier for all women in engineering. I think it was Ishmael who was talking about the fact that it isn't just that we need female engineers, we need engineers in this country. We're always going to be short of them. We're incredibly short of them across the UK right now. That will continue. And if we are not tapping into, at least half of the population and making sure that engineering roles are as accessible as possible, we've already lost. The other reason why it's so special to me is that I really do feel that we are custodians of capability. So while we're in these, Paula and I both in these directorate roles, we have these huge capabilities, we have these huge legacies, and we need to ensure that we are bearing that in mind and driving it for the future. Okay, so my career. Very like a few other people who I've now spoken today, I didn't start in engineering as my subject matter. I started with physics as my background. I knew that I wanted to work in defence. I knew that I wanted to switch that physics into engineering, but it's not necessary to have an engineering degree to become an engineer. That's probably the most important thing to realise at various points. You can go in with science, technology, engineering, maths, anything which is in that logic and mathematical basis. So physics was of great interest to me, and I figured with that basis it gave me wider options rather than being stovepiped into one particular engineering discipline like electrical or mechanical. With physics I had the ability to branch out wider. So I joined BAE Systems first time around as a graduate systems engineer. I worked on a helicopter program, and I really learned during that time how to translate the knowledge that I had in terms of, mathematical equations into actual professional engineering. It's very different being, knowing from a civil engineering perspective the perfect way to design a bridge. You can know the perfect way. When you get out into the real world, it's not that simple. There are gate reviews, design reviews, cost considerations, quality, schedule considerations that all pull into the mix. And your first graduate role that you take really takes the knowledge that you have and turns it into a professional engineering career and a different way of operating. After BAE, I joined AWE, that's the Atomic Weapons Establishment, but for most of that time I was seconded out to Lockheed Martin in Florida. So that was my first time of working internationally, and that was fascinating. Obviously the actual engineering itself is the same, but cultures, which you assume are so similar, are actually incredibly different. That role, I was running an engineering team and gained the engineering credibility that I needed for the rest of my career. You'll see this time and time again, people, as you want to move up towards different management roles, you have to have credibility of having delivered engineering projects behind you in order to get to senior positions within the company. From AWE, I joined Raytheon, another defence company, and that time I moved into a functional role. Most defence companies or senior engineering companies tend to have businesses which run the projects and functions which drive how the engineering work is to be done. And from there, I joined BAE Systems for the second time in 2015, and I joined naval ships. So BAE Systems is a huge company made up of air businesses, maritime businesses, cyber businesses, and I joined part of the maritime business. I did a head of engineering role. Then I stepped out of my comfort zone and moved into project management and strategy, and really started thinking wider about what the future of naval ships were across the UK. From there, I became the engineering director of that business unit, and then into the group engineering director role, which is where I have responsibility of running the council of the engineering directors from across all of the businesses. So engineering today and tomorrow. It used to be quite simple in terms of engineering. The old stereotypical model that you would think of drawing rooms with large sketch pads and doing the design work and doing calculations, and people having a very set career path from graduate engineer to junior engineer to senior engineer to principal engineer to chief engineer. It's not predictable like that anymore. Career paths are very different across different spheres in engineering. Technology is changing fast, the way that we operate is changing fast, and career paths are changing. It really brings to the forefront the importance of what we call softer skills within engineering. It's what I was saying earlier around, it's not enough to know how to design the perfect bridge. You have to know how to operate in an environment, and you have to be able to influence people and work within teams. Digital, huge changes coming into engineering globally in terms of the skills that we need in the future are quite different to the skills we need today. I know that you heard from Dame Judith Hackett earlier in the session this morning, and from Dame Judith's role as chairwoman of Ingenuity, excuse me, there it's, excuse me. Sorry about that. There is a lot that we're doing to identify the skills needed for the future of the UK. But the most important change that I've really seen throughout my career is the workplace. Whereas before, there used to be cultures of presenteeism. Now the cultures are much more flexible and much more inclusive. I mean, Paula's speech was referencing being a single mother. And it really is much more possible to work from home, to set your own hours, and to have a much more work-life balance. So, some career takeaways just that I've learned throughout my career. So, you don't always have to know where you're aiming for. You don't have to, on day one, think, okay, I want to be a chief engineer, I want to be an engineering director, I want to work on this particular project. Doesn't work like that. Things change so fast. Honestly, just assess each role as it comes along, understand if it gives you the skills you need, and think about whether or not you're going to enjoy that role. Big one for me, don't be afraid to take a role that you don't know how to do yet. As you've heard, I was a physicist going into a graduate engineering role, didn't actually know how to be an engineer. I was an engineer going into a project management and strategy role. The times when you're a bit scared to take a role because it's a bit outside your comfort zone are the ones where you're going to learn the most. Honestly, don't be afraid to take them. If you do have a clear role in mind, tell someone, figure out a path to get there. For the role I'm in now, for sort of about 18 months before moving into it, I was actively, not campaigning, but making sure that the people who could make the decisions about that role knew that that was where my heart lay, that that was the role that I wanted to go into, and that I was passionate about it, and understanding what gaps I had that I needed to fill before I would be able to take that. Become known, that's a big one. So it's never always about just the day-to-day, doing the calculations, doing the design work. There's always discretionary extra work across organisations, whether that's working with things like diversity and inclusion, helping with ethics conferences, any additional things. Do the extra work and become known and volunteer to do more. Building your personal brand. When you start, take some time and think about what it is that you want to be known for in the job, and really do build that over time. But the biggest one, absolutely love what you do. There is no point going into work every day if you don't love it and enjoy it. Okay, and the last slide, I think, for me what we look for in graduate engineers today, it really is those soft skills. You know, we don't take people on day one thinking, great, they can design an aircraft carrier from scratch. We look for someone who's got a basis in technical credibility through the fact that they've got a degree. But what we look for is the ability to learn and want to learn, being able to problem solve, having that creativity and innovation, having resilience, and most importantly, around the behaviours. It's not just about what we do, but how we do it, having collaborative work behaviours and respect for others. They're the kind of things that employers really are looking for in people today. And there you go. I do apologise for my coughing fit in the middle. I promise it is nothing to do with coronavirus. I have no idea why, but any questions I'm happy to answer.
Well, we first of all have a video from BAE Systems, Joe, so I'm just going to play that through now.
So I'm Jane, I'm a manufacturing graduate for BAE Systems. I spend some days sat at my computer doing data analysis or designing new layout, and other days I'm out and about on the shop floor, talking to operators, in meetings, meeting with external suppliers, meeting with managers.
So I'm Jane, I'm a manufacturing graduate for BAE Systems. I spend some days sat at my computer doing data analysis or designing new layout, and other days I'm out and about on the shop floor, talking to operators, in meetings, meeting with external suppliers, meeting with managers. Some days I'm out on training, just no days the same, no weeks the same.
You do need a degree to be part of the grad scheme, but what that degree is in doesn't matter.
To be accepted onto a scheme at BAE Systems, which is a top employer, was incredible. The opportunities were incredible, and which are well-known companies for that reason.
And the attitude that you bring.
You do need a degree to be part of the grad scheme, but what that degree is in doesn't matter. BAE Systems take people from a whole range of degrees. I was medical engineering, which doesn't sound very relevant, but it's the skills and the passion and the attitude that you bring to your role that makes you do well.
There's a great community here at BAE Systems, not even just at your site, but across the sites across the UK.
Within my role within the graduate scheme, before I even started, I was assigned a buddy. They were there to answer any questions or concerns I had. And now I'm on the scheme, my managers, they're great for supporting early careers.
Lifelong friends from the grad scheme here. If I could encourage anyone to apply to the graduate scheme at BAE Systems, I'd say just do it. You're really producing valuable work from day one. You're given training, amazing support, you've helped towards professional development, and you get to work on these incredible innovative products. You don't have to have a specific aeronautical degree to work on aircraft. You don't have to have a specific naval degree to work on ship. All aspects of your career are taken into account. It's an amazing opportunity to work for a global company. Why not?
Yes, we seem to have had a couple of difficulties in that, but this will be available after the webinar. So we are slightly overrunning, but we have had some questions. And one of them, there's a couple of them the same, which I'll just quickly ask Joanna. What nationalities can work at BAE Systems, including those with dual nationality? I can't hear you, I'm afraid.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Sorry, I have a dual mute and I pressed the other one. Yeah, it honestly depends on the project. Some projects, such as our submarines, just because of the nuclear power element, are UK only. A lot of them are open to multiple nationalities. It'll be the same in a lot of defence industries. It's more about the ability to gain security clearance than anything else. But we do have a number of dual nationals, a number of foreign nationals. It will mean that some parts of the business you can't work in, but some parts you can.
Hi, Joe. Sorry, I think Elizabeth is having problems. It's Alex Knight here.
Hi, Alex.
Hello. So one more question, then we'll quickly pop to the networking break. But there is a question about being a mature student. So are your graduate programs open to mature students or students of graduates of any age?
Absolutely. Yeah, there is no discrimination in terms of age. In terms of coming through, it's about going through assessment centres, about the degree that you've done, as I said, in a kind of scientific discipline, and about, more than anything, the soft skills and the behaviours. Age isn't a factor at all.
Fantastic. Thank you again so much for your talk. That was really interesting. I, at a later stage in my career, also found it really interesting. Thank you, and very useful. So what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to the networking sessions again. Obviously, it's a lunch break, so please do make sure you go and get yourself some food as well, and then make the most of the networking session. And we will be back here again, back into the different streams. So go to your landing page. No, sorry, we are back here, in fact, for the afternoon keynote. So come back here again at 1:30, please. That would be super. Yeah, as the slide says. So enjoy your lunch and enjoy the networking. We'll see you back here at 1:30. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.